Hey guys, how are you? I hope you all are having good days, so if you have any recommendation for new video you can suggest me in comments section. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto had Acnologia sealed instead of Kurama. This is part 1, and if you want more then please leave a like, share and subscribe. Let's get in the video. That was the sound he had grown accustomed to. The only constant thing in his short life that never changed. Every day, coming back to this small damp cell. After every mission or session the masked men took him to, if those were even a good enough cover-up to give them. He had only been alive for 3 years. Naturally, his mind was not fully developed yet and he only remembered bits and pieces. And it was a living hell. Whenever he was out of his cell, he knew that it was time for another mission. Thrown out with some strange other men on the small field, clad in only stain-covered rags, he knew what happened next like a ritual. He would feel a strange horrible pain pierce throughout his whole body, causing him to scream, hoping that it would stop soon after. Then a burning sensation would move through his body, increasing the pain a dozen times more. And then, it all went black. When he would wake up, he would already be back in his cell. But there were new rips and stains on his clothes from what he had done on those missions. What did the masked men call this stuff again? Blood. Every time he awoke his body was in agony and there were new wounds all over him. But after a few moments, they would vanish from sight. What made them leave? Do even his wounds run away from him? He must not be liked very much because all the masked men yell at him when he doesn't respond to their words. Even though he was locked away in the cell, he had still gained some knowledge. He would repeat the words and sentences that the men he met would say to him. Like fucker shit or please God. No. And if he was hungry, then men would bring him food and place it on the floor in front of him. But he had to get it fast or else the rats would take it or the water would ruin it. And when he was thirsty, he would either drink the water that dripped from the ceiling or the glass the men would give him. He would lay on the floor, not reacting, not moving to anything that passed by his cell. The shadows of the men would roll over him as they walked by, illuminated by the small torches on the walls, and mutter about how he would be used for another mission. His cell door opened up and 2 masked men in grey armor and metal arm guards picked him up. They grabbed under his arms and dragged him along. Sama told us to bring the demon for another execution. The man on his right stated to his counterpart, but it is just another captured Jnin, right? We can handle things like this ourselves. We don't need to bring this thing out every time we find one of them. Why does Sama always use the monster to kill those we capture? The left man questioned, voicing his curiosity. He wants to use as many opportunities as he can find to control this thing better. And he said that he doesn't want any evidence of struggle to ruin our base. As they came closer to a locked door, they left him standing there on his feet. And like a mirage, they suddenly disappeared in a rain of leaves. Monster, demon, that thing, and it. That was what they called him whenever he was brought to this door or left outside. But despite all those names, that wasn't what he was called. What was he really called again? That man with the wrapped face said it sometimes. Oh, right. Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki was his real name. His name, his life and his loneliness was all that he had. This red stuff, the rats, and the men in masks were all that he knew. That, and the water that dripped from the walls. Drip, drip, drip. The tall man stood with a cane in his hand, one arm wrapped with bandages, while the other was free from its sleeve. He was wearing a black and grey robe that covered his right arm and went down to his feet. The right side of his face was covered in bandages that wrapped around his forehead. And on his wrinkled chin was an X-shaped scar. He stood on a leveled stand which circled over a small training field they had en route. Covered in uprooted dirt and grass with 2 doors on adjacent walls facing each other. It was used for the new recruits and trainees to test their abilities in ninjutsu, taijutsu, and jinjutsu. It was leveled so that the more experienced ninja and elders could look down and see the new recruits' efforts. But lately, over the last year, it had not been used to train the new recruits. Alternatively, they were brought out into the woods or trained out there in the battlefield. Instead, this place was used to gain any last-minute information captured spies had before they were silenced. In his experience, people in their last moments tend to reveal everything they could to survive. Lately, more and more foreign ninja had appeared in the village. Some would sneak in from Kumagakure and others would come from Kurigakure. He had found no evidence of insurgents from Sunagakure yet. They had to have all their forces in the village lest their Jinchuriki lost his temper and start a massacre. It had appeared that each hidden village was sending a team of ninja to infiltrate the land. It had started when the 4th Mizukage sent a team to check for weak points in the security of the village. There was something wrong with that boy. He was the Jinchuriki of the Sanbi, and lately he was holding the state of the village like it was a yo-yo. Sending that crazed shark man to kill his own team so that there was no evidence of their work to be found. That was the last resort in a situation like that, especially when the whole team was still capable of fighting. It was unsettling, like the decisions he was making were not his own. Then a team from Kumagakure was sent to charge and attack any ninja they could find. Of course, lighting village ninja were never very subtle. They always preferred to attack rather than to sneak. Perhaps they were only ninja because of the ninjutsu they practiced. The only times he remembered Kumagakure sneaking around was the Haika incident only a few weeks ago and the incident with the Jinchuriki girl almost 20 years earlier. These were both attempts to increase their military and strategic abilities for the better. It wasn't enough that they had a Raikage that could take down armies. Or the most attuned Jinchuriki out of all the elemental nations. And now Wagakure was joining in the fray. Sending a team for reconnaissance on the noble families and the Jinchuriki. Dansum never understood the methods of Lenoki. He would always watch the chaos from the outside, never directly joining the battle. He just let his men do their job and never interfered. Which he should have, with the growing rumors of a blonde youngster blowing up buildings for the hell of it. Always using explosive clay and yelling out Katsu. He would never allow the people of Konoha to revolt or betray him like that. And he had a great plan for any ninja or civilian that was against him. He had taken the Jinchuriki boy into his ranks and made him a weapon. Due to the boy being no more than a toddler, he couldn't expect any conscious contact or agreement with the fox demon, so the members of Root's research team came up with a solution. The discovery that the demon's chakra activates when the boy experiences pain. If they could make a seal that caused agonizing pain to go through the boy's body and control him through that pain, they had a walking weapon in their hands. It took a few tries to get the fox's chakra moving, but when the boy was covered in the vile energy, it proved to work. The first time the cloak appeared, the boy dove at his controller through pure instinct. Dansum only raised his fingers in a seal, and the boy stopped, a blood-curdling scream of pain from his throat. When he did, a kanji appeared on his stomach at the center of the seal. The boy would not attack anyone Dansum did not see fit to kill. And when he was done, he would lower his hand and the boy would stop. The chakra would dissipate and then he would fall unconscious. It was useful to tie up loose ends when you were tired of doing the work. An Anbu ninja appeared behind Dansum, kneeling before his master. Dansum-sama, they are both ready. Should we release them? The masked ninja asked his leader. Ah, speaking of tying up loose ends, yes, let the Iwa ninja out first and keep Naruto-kun locked, I wish to see if we can gain any more answers. The robed ninja elder said to the younger shinobi. The Anbu nodded and made a motion with his hand. One door opened in the area beneath them and a man was thrown out. He appeared beaten and battered, tortured for any information that he had. But like a true Junin, he had kept his mouth shut. He stood up and looked around, noticing that several new ninja had appeared around the clearing. The man was dressed in a red outfit with a brown flak jacket. Around his head was a standard forehead protector of the ninja villages. Etched into the metal was the image of dented rocks overlapping, the mark of an Iwa ninja. His weapon pack was gone, taken when he was brought in. The man looked up at those surrounding him and yelled, "Where are we, you fuckers? What am I doing here?" The robed man tapped his cane on the floor, causing an echo that followed Ith's silence. He looked down at the Iwa ninja with a narrowed eye. "You have infiltrated my village and killed my men. You have refused to give us the reason why you are here. I will give you one last chance to tell us your intentions. Who sent you?" The robed man finished as he lowered his tone, his voice not losing its calm edge. The Iwa nin scoffed at the elder man. "Heh, you're a fool to think I will talk. Come on, send down all your men. I'll kill them all." The man exclaimed as he stood in a defensive stance. Dansum looked at the young man, then turned his head and gave a nod to his follower. The root ninja appeared in the arena, opposite the foreign ninja. The intruder changed his stance to follow the new arrival. But before they could start fighting, the Konoha Anbu opened the door behind him and shunshined away. The insurgent only looked puzzled, like he was expecting more. Was he supposed to leave through there? Were they letting him go? Just as he was about to question their motives, a presence made itself known. Expecting an animal or enemy ninja to appear, he did not expect a child to come into the light. The boy in question was small, possibly only 3 or 4 years old. His pale blonde hair was unruly and unkempt. His arms and legs were thin, like bones with skin. His stomach and cheeks were coming in, showing he was malnourished. And on each cheek were 3 scar-like whiskers, defining his face. He wore torn cloth-like rags, remnants of a shirt and pants he wore. The sandals he wore were stained, dark red from dried blood. But his most defining characteristic were his empty blue eyes. Like pools of water, but dirtied and unclear. Faded eyes that conveyed no emotions, no life. If he was not standing on his feet, he could have been mistaken for a corpse. The boy lifted his head, seeing the new man that stood before him. The man cringed when he saw his eyes, like they were looking into his soul. "You." The child said in a dried, cracked little voice. Tilting his head, the boy continued to stare at the man. "You. Knew. Kill." Dansum stared down as the two met face to face. A faint smile appeared on his scarred face. Now, it was time to show what his weapon could do. He held up his left hand, brought it into a half-tiger seal, and pumped it with his chakra. Rah! The little boy yelled in agonizing pain, falling to his knees. The Iwanin looked in sheer fright at what was happening to the child. His hair was changing, becoming spikier and sharp. His whiskers becoming rougher and more scar-like. His nails grew, digging into his head as he held it in pain. Through the rags, the Iwanin saw a pattern appear on his stomach. A sun-like formation made of runes and kanji phasing onto his stomach. And in the center on the formation was the character for control. The kanji used by Dansum to make him his own personal play toy. The boy fell to his hands and knees, gasping for breath. He lifted his head towards the man, revealing crimson eyes and slit pupils that made him appear feral. The ninja froze in fear. This was what the Red Cloud had sent him to find. Locating and identifying the Jinchuriki of the Kikbi was his mission. Given to him and his team by the men of the Red Cloud. If they could find its location, they were promised high positions in the new world. They had expected a noble of Konoha with security that made the daemon green with envy. But instead, it was just a broken child hidden in the shadows. The possessed boy dived at the man, aiming to rip him apart. The ninja evaded the strikes and jumped over the demon. The boy turned around and went for a second attempt as the Iwanin landed on the floor. His hands moved through a flurry of seals as he screamed his technique, Rift style. Pierced Hell Spike Yard. Everywhere in front of him was covered in rock spikes. The boy, mid-jump, was screwed in his stomach. He hung there, limp, as blood flowed down the spike. The ninja smirked and laughed. He had killed Konoha's secret weapon. Now this village was nothing but a sitting duck. He turned around, prepared to kill the robed man above him, but stopped when he felt a sensation in his chest. He looked down and saw a diminutive clawed hand clean through his chest. He turned his head, blood pooling down his chin in the process. Behind him was the previously believed dead boy, blood leaking from his stomach. He looked furious, his rage evident in his twisted, exhausted face. Raya. He ripped his hand out sideways of the man's chest, leaving a giant orifice through his lungs and ribs. Blood jetted out of the wound and he fell to his knees, dying instantly. The blood made a puddle that stained the boy's feet and sandals. The boy took deep breaths, blood spilling out of him. Dansum smiled at his subject's result. He brought his hands down and stopped the flow of chakra. The vile energy dissipated from the boy's body, causing him to pass out in his own blood. The elder nodded his head towards his subordinates and they followed his order. One Anbu grabbed the boy and lifted him up, another taking the new corpse to add to the pile. The gathered ninja dispersed, the demonstration finished, the show was done. Another ninja, very young in comparison, appeared in a kneeling position behind Dansum. Dansum-sama, should we take Naruto to the medics? If we leave that wound as it is, he may die. The man sounded worried for the poor boy. No, Dansum said with a commanding voice. We do not need to worry about Naruto-kun's medical state. It will take care of itself. Dansum walked past the kneeling young man, our concerns rest with finding the reason all these intrusions are happening. Every major village is sending their forces to. Sir, if we don't heal him, he may die. The masked man stood up to address the elder. But as he turned around, the elder was leaking killer intent over his entire form. No, he will not. Those are not the first injuries he has suffered and they will not be his last. His injuries are taken care of by the fox, it will not let its container die. The elder turned back around. That boy has proved more than amazing in the field. He has killed every insurgent team we have intercepted. His presence has fortified itself as a horrifying force in the world. We have even stopped the idea of an Uchiha rebellion. But sir, he is only a boy. There has to be a better solution for our power struggles. Naruto does not have to be that solution. The masked man tried to reason with the old man. We are ninja, lad. We will use any and all methods to survive and keep our people alive. Even our children have a duty to help our village. Dansum started to walk away. I will do anything I must to help Konoha strive. The masked man looked down. Oh, by the way, Dansum turned his head to address the young man. What is your name? You don't call him monster or demon, so are you familiar with him? The masked man looked up at the elder. He brought his hand up and took his animal mask off his face. It revealed a young man with gravity-defying gray hair. His lower face was covered by a face mask and his left eye had a vertical scar. His left eye was different from his other, red with 3 tomos circling around the pupil. My name is Kakashi Haddock, Dansum-sama. I requested to join your ranks as chance to learn your style. Please show me how, Dansum-sama. This was both a truth and a lie. He was here for one reason and one reason only. Find a way to save Naruto. Oh. Copy ninja, Kakashi-kun. It is an honor to have you in our humble ranks. Naruto was on the floor of his cell, close to losing consciousness. The hole in his stomach was slowly closing, cutting off the flow of blood. His eyes became heavy and he could not stay awake. But almost instantaneously, he found that he was no longer in his cell. He was lying in a foot-tall pool of water. The walls were further across and the bars were no longer there. Pipes spread and twisted together on the wall, leading to something down the black abyss. Naruto lifted himself up, looking from left and right to find something notable. He got to his feet and started to walk in one direction. He had walked for what had seemed like hours. Then, after a while, he finally reached something. Bars that raised all the way to the ceiling and spread over the wall. He walked to the bars and went to touch them, and then. The boy fell to his bottom in surprise, wondering what could have caused the bestial roar. Before he looked up in surprise at what was behind the bars. Behind the bars was a fox of titanic size. It had orange-red fur and was lying on its belly. On the kitsune's back was 9 flailing, massive tails that caused the water to ripple. The creature bared its teeth and gums at the 3-year-old boy. A growl echoed out through the hall. "Human, what are you doing here?" The fox looked at the boy, flaring its killer intent at him. "If you do not open this cage now, then I will destroy you with my own paws." The fox exclaimed in fury and anger. "Do. Be. You. Thing." The boy looked at the fox with his lifeless eyes. He was unaffected by the beast's horrifying power. "Me? I am the great Kijbi-sama. I am the demon who crushes mountains and levels seas with the movement of my tails." The fox yelled, pride brimming in its voice. The boy only stared at the fox, his mouth open in a small comedic fashion. As if he was as amazed as he could be looking at the creature in front of him. "Kijbi-sama. What are doing here? Where this is?" he said in a disjointed, grammatically incorrect fashion. He had hoped that the fox could shine some light on the subject. "Boy, address me as that always. I am your superior in every way, so listen closely." The fox lowered itself to almost eye level with the boy. "You have been using my chakra almost every day for what those men want. And although I have no quarrel with the killings, you have no right to use my power for these pathetic humans' needs." "Patra?" the boy asked, tilting his head in confusion. "No foolish meatbag, I said chakra." "Oh. Sorry. I heard. Bad. Why do you talk like that, child? Do you not know how to speak?" "Sorry. Kijbi-sama. I learn. From. Masks." The fox narrowed his eyes. So this child learned from his captors. He doesn't know anything else about this world, huh? The fox wondered if he could teach this child to rule for his sake. And in his experience, the best way to teach was through fear. Then he decided to plant a threat into the boy's head. "Child, you should run, no one can stand before my greatness for too long. Before they are driven to madness or I kill them. So watch your step or you may die." The fox ended his speech with a devilish smirk. The boy only stared at the fox in wonder. Then he walked through the bars and up to the fox's paws. The fox looked down in shock at the boy's actions. He looked down and saw the boy just stare back at him. And then saw it for the first time. The lifelessness that was held in his eyes. Like a dead soul in a moving body. That was not the look the child of Kushina and Minato should have. He could not believe that the humans had done this to a child. "Why do you not run? I am evil incarnate, the demon of the elemental nations. I could kill you in an instant." He expected the child to come to his senses and run away in terror. But the child continued to stare and after several tense moments, he answered. "If you kill, then you would when came." The fox was shocked to a new level at the nerve this child had shown to him. He turned in his cage and faced away from the child. "Leave, boy, I am feeling merciful. Run now, before I slaughter you." The boy only stood for a few moments before running out of the bars. He turned around and bowed. "Goodbye. Kijbi-sama. See. Soon. You?" "Yes, I will bring you back here to teach you how to talk to me properly." As the child was about to run off, he said one last thing. "And don't call me Kijbi-sama, that won't do until you learn the proper respect in my presence. Just Kijbi will do for now." Hiruzen Sarutobi stood overlooking all of Konoha. This was such a peaceful village, despite all the turmoil around the world. But it was not the result of his work. Could he even call himself the Hokage anymore? He was a puppet, a shadow of his former self. The night Minato died, he had been prepared to take that child under his care. But the council had decided against keeping the child safe. In their eyes, he was nothing more than the fox that attacked their home. He had hoped that he could appeal to the other elders of the village, but no such luck. Homura and Kaharu had both agreed that he should be placed in more capable hands. And in came Dansme. His old friend had told the council members of his plan to use Naruto as a weapon. Hiruzen was against it, saying that it was inhumane. But the council had won, even bringing in the daimyo for the decision. And as such, the village had prospered. No one would challenge a superpower that had a monster at their fingertips. The other countries in Shikriki never complied with the wishes of the people. So as a result they took the choice of free will from the boy before he could have any. It had horrified him that he just let this happen. He felt like a puppet that Dansme used to keep up appearances. The only influence he could make anymore was convincing Kakashi of his plan to try and liberate Naruto from Danzum's control. But even that was a long shot to make. He just wished for simple times again. When children could laugh and play all together. But no matter the leader, the need for fighting and power grabbing was just too strong. He wished he could go the way Jiraiya and Minato had with their ideals. That we should aim for no killing and peace between the people. But no matter how many times he thought of it, he could only imagine a war coming forth. Danzum had kept sending the bodies as a message to their respective villages. The Kages would storm in anger, saying they never sent their men to infiltrate. That they were the ones that had crossed the border and killing other soldiers. And all this hatred had led to a gridlock between the villages. They were waiting for war, they only had to wait for the first shot to be made. Hiruzen looked back to his younger days. Being taught by the Shaddai and Nidaime Hokages. The fun and hope he had experienced back then. But when the Nidaime had lost his life to the Jin and Kin brothers of Kumo, he remembered what the Shaddai did next. He had spent years of time working on a brand new jutsu. A genius ninja and leader, nothing was impossible for that man. He had said that, if there is no peace in this world, then maybe we can find some in another. It was a fool's dream, even for someone like Hashirama. To travel to different dimensions and create new societies. Hiruzen believed that his sensei was only living out his last days in wonder and fantasy. Until one day, they worked and a portal was opened. Only the top class of Konoha could even be allowed to know this secret. When enough time had passed for preparation, an expedition had been formed. Hashirama was the leader, being the strongest of the bunch. His daughter followed him into the new world, promise isn't to bring him back no matter what. She even asked that Hiruzen take care of Tsunade and Nawaki while she was gone. Along with them, they brought skilled ninja, scientists and medics to accompany in case something went wrong. After 1 week, they had no intel from the expedition, except for one word they sent back. They had been presumed Kia, and any knowledge of the portal jutsu was destroyed. Each day, Hiruzen wondered what was on the other side. Were there enemies even they could not defeat? Or was life so good that they had left the nations for a new utopia? Was it better than the situations playing out in front of him now? He would go back at times and look at the message sent back to them through the jutsu. The cave gave off an eerie atmosphere to those that saw it. Darkness covered the interior, stalactites and spires appearing all over the floor and ceiling. Several men all walked into the center of the clearing. Usually, they only sent clones, informants, or holograms in their place. But due to the circumstances, they thought it better to meet in person. A man with several piercings all over his face and orange hair walked up. He was dressed in a long, black cloak with a red interior. And spread around the cloak was the figures of red clouds. And atop this man's head was a forehead protector with the figures of 4 parallel lines falling down. And intersecting the lines was a long scratch. He opened his eyes, revealing eyes with light purple irises and sclera, and a ripple pattern appearing from the center. This man was Pain. He was the leader of the Akatsuki. Or so it is believed. The woman with blue hair, lavender eyeshadow, and a piercing under her lip walked out. She wore a headband similar to the man to her left. And atop her head was an origami flower with a more faded shade of blue. She had the look of a woman who was willing to take any life for their cause. She was Conan. Angel of the land of rain. So, are we all in assembly? The pierced man announced in a powerful, emotionless voice. From the shadows, several men walked into the light. Nah, Leader-san, a large man said to his boss. This man had a blue tint to his skin and long blue hair like a shark fin. Gill-like marks, making bags under his eyes and sharp pointed teeth. On his head was a metal band with 4 waving lines, a scratch through the middle. And on his back was a massive sword wrapped in bandages. Is it almost time for the big party we've set up for? You know I can get impatient if I have to wait too long for the fun. This man was Kisame Hashigaki. Monster of the hidden mist. There is no need for worry, Kisame. It will almost be time for our greatest gathering. The leader of the group assured the crazy shark. Are you sure it is time for that yet? The leader turned to the one who had addressed him. The man in question was a tall man with dark skin, with a white hood and black mask. His eyes were his only visible characteristics, green irises and red sclera with no pupils. He wore the medal of the crashing waterfall, with a slash through the middle. We haven't collected the right funds and don't have enough support to sustain our conquest over the other nations. I don't want to lose all my money because you were premature and impatient. This man was Kakuzu. The zombie broker of the underworld. Kakuzu, Conan stepped between Pain and the masked member. Watch your tone. I am worried though. A new member had made himself known by the others. This was a young man, short in his stature. He appeared to only look about in his teens, with shaggy red hair. He was uncomfortable, wishing to be in his Haruko covering. But he was asked to appear in his scorpion form instead. We seem to be rushing ahead of schedule. Is there a reason for that? This boy-like man was Sasori. Sasori of the Red Sand. Yes, Sasori-san. But there must be a very logical reason for our rush. A thin man walked next to Sasori. He was a pale-skinned man with long black hair. He had thin cheeks and a low nose. His pupils were slit and eyes covered by purple markings, giving him the appearance of a snake. We have used our connections to fool the members of the village nations into instigating a war with each other. We asked old acquaintances of Kakuzu-san to pose as members of Iwagakure to infiltrate Konohagakure. Sasori-san used his spies in the upper tier of the council and Sunagakure to stir up the idea of infiltration. And I used my mind control techniques and impure world resurrection to have men pose as Kumagakure nin and attack. It was unfortunate that I lost so many specimens, but it was necessary for our cause. This man was Orochimaru. Orochimaru of the Sannin. Although, I do wonder for some of our plans. Did you send out Kurigakure nin to instigate a rivalry between the villages, Kisame-kun? The reptilian-like man asked the shark. Anything he could do to further his info library and expand his horizons. No, I have no comrades left from the village. Did you persuade them, Leader-san? The shark said with a toothy grin. It was not I, but I do know who it was. The pierced man declared to his followers. As he was about to continue, the tan-masked man walked forward to address Pain. Do you mind telling us what we are doing exactly? Is there someone behind the scenes, or are you just vain in everything you say? Kakuzu cracked his hands as black wires started to wave from his forearms. If there is, please tell us. I don't like to be kept in the dark. Honan flared intent at the ancient man, paper peeling off her hands and face. Sasori smirked as his ninja puppets hovered behind him, lifted by illuminated wire. Kisame smiled and lifted his sword off his back, crashing it into the ground before him. Orochimaru kept a small smile on his face as his long tongue danced out of his mouth. Pain was stoic during this whole confrontation. Ma everyone. Please calm down. It ain't nice to have a disagreement between friends. You idiot, they aren't friends, they are working together for the goal. If you would stop eating every shit-covered corpse we find, you may have known that. Okay, that was a low blow. And we both eat the poopy corpses, you know that. Every member looked toward the new arrival. A man that had a Venus flytrap appearance, one half white, one half black. The white half had a carefree look on his face with yellow pupils in the mouth. The black half with a serious aura to him, yellow eyes the only thing that stood out in his face. The creature was Zetsu. Personal spy to the Akatsuki. Zetsu, have you brought him? They are growing impatient. Pain said to the half-breed. They needed the core player to bring this all together. Yes, he is here. He said he wanted to get ready and make sure everything was set as we have this meeting. The two halves finished their explanation before turning to show a man with long black hair and a mask with a flame pattern. The members stared at the new player. Who was this man? And how had he gained the attention of the leader and spy? Hello, ladies and gentlemen, the masked man said in a rather deep voice. You all have helped prepare the new plans for our goal. You all seem impatient with the idea of changes. So I think you should hear our plans for the future. Naruto sat up against the wall of his cell. His breathing steady and mind calm. Over the last 2 years, he had grown more accustomed to living in this damp cell. He no longer watched the world pass by his bars, but moved around and sat up after coming from assassinations. This new living had caused him to gain more life in his face. No longer did he appear dead at first sight, but even with these changes, his eyes were still empty. Some of the Anbu, he finally knew their name, noticed the changes and tried to break him again. But he only ignored their words and actions. And after a while, they just stopped showing up to hurt him. He was taller after turning 5. But he was still short for his age. And he no longer seemed malnourished. Grabbing his food before it was ruined and eating what he could. He even noticed that there was more food than usual over the past year. What had caused all these changes were the meetings with the creature in his stomach. Over the last 2 years, Kikbi still did not like him, but had warmed up. He gave him teachings on ways to live and how people act. He was even helping him learn to speak correctly. As he walked through his sewer, he saw the customary bars that held the fox. He tried to take the seal off the bars to open the cage, but every time he came close he would stop. Like something horrible would happen if he did. He walked up to the sleeping fox and yelled the greeting he taught him. Fuck off, Kikbi. He said with a slight smile. The fox opened his eyes and looked at the boy with contempt. What the hell did I tell you, boy? That is not how you address me. Sorry, Kikbi, but every time I talk to you, you yell that at me. I thought that was how we greet. The boy said with no change in his facial expression. He had caused a titanic fox to sweat drop. Yes, well, I am the great Kikbi, you are just a foolish shit that bothers me every day. The fox raised to its feet and begun to shrink. He was smaller than his usual frame, but still larger than most of the Anbu. The Kikbi had discovered that it was easier to just change its eyes than it was to keep pressing its face to the ground. Plus, it would make it easier to teach the child if it didn't have to try and find him in his shadow. What are we doing today? Are we continuing with the paper that goes boom and stuff? The boy said with a tilted head. The fox was teaching him to create paper that exploded, saying that it would be useful for their escape. Yes, it is time for you to make one as a test. The Kikbi smirked at the idea of freedom from another cell. Once this boy had escaped, he would force him to unlock the seal. Every time the boy would try, the control seal placed by the insolent old human would warn him not to. So once they were in the clear, he would scare the child into it and be freed. Maybe when he was out, he would eat the boy. Ah, that would be a treat. On the outside, Naruto opened his eyes and took a piece of his rag off. Then he bit his thumb and blood dripped out. He followed the fox's direction and made runes on the cloth. He had made many attempts at making the right symbols correctly, but had difficulties getting kanji right. And taking so many attempts, he lost a lot of blood and passed out. When he awoke, the fox had just said, "Moron, that was a fun day." Making the precise kanji and lines on the rag. If he could add the chakra right, then it would be a bomb at his wish. When he was finished, he held the rag in front of him. The cloth drenched in dark red, all it needed was the chakra. Kikbi had taught him how to bring out chakra over the sessions they had. He also said that in all his lifetime, he had never seen someone so bad at working chakra. Naruto did not know what he meant when he said that, so he thought it was a compliment. Poor kid. Naruto brought his hands together and tried to charge the note. If he could place some chakra into it, then it could be used as a bomb later on. Naruto concentrated for what seemed like hours to him with no results. No, it's not enough to power the note, let alone set it off. You have to bring out more. Keep the flow steady and strong. Naruto gritted his teeth and pulled out as much power as he could. It seemed hopeless until he felt a warm sensation move through his body and to his hands. He opened his eyes and saw the rag move. Naruto was so excited, he kept pouring as much chakra as he could. The Kikbi smirked from inside his cage. Heh, almost there. If he can keep enough of these hidden, then it will be time for us to break free. The fox then thought of what he would do. He would bite off the heads of the council first. Then he would set off a Bijidama at the center of the village. As Kikbi was too distracted with the thought of carnage and destruction that he did not realize it before it was too late. No, you idiot. That's too much, stop. Naruto stopped his charge and noticed that the note was lighted. All the chakra had built up and overflowed, causing it to start burning. Naruto's eyes widened and tried to throw the note. But as it left his hands, it was too late. Each member looked at the masked man with expectation. Thinking that anyone dressed like that was going to spout out nonsense of conquest and end of days. But at first sight, this man seemed calm and in control. Like he wasn't standing in a room with several of the most wanted men and women in all the elemental nations. He seemed in control, even though they had never seen this man before. Like he had everything in the palm of his hand. Oh, if they only knew. Now, since you all have been so kind enough, I have decided that I will answer any questions you have before we continue. I know this may seem difficult to understand, but I may have the answers you seek. The man said with no changes in tone or body. Showing no fear to talking to S-class criminals like children. Yes. Kakuzu said as he raised his hand toward the masked man. Does this hurt? As he finished talking, several black threads tore through his arm and towards the man. Just as everyone was prepared to see it rain blood, the thread passed through his body, untouched. Everyone's eyes but Pain's and Conan's widened in surprise. This man was not a hologram sent from a disclosed site. Nor was it a Bunchen, because it didn't implode on contact. Whatever this man was, attacks didn't work. The masked man wiped a speck of imaginary dust off his clothes. Okay, now that we have passed formalities, I can start. We won't have any more problems, will we? The fully masked man asked the semi-masked man. Kakuzu nodded his head in agreement. He was ready to kill this strange man who seemed like he was superior. But Kakuzu was truly surprised by the man's actions. Even Hashirama Senju did not have a technique like that. This man was interesting, maybe he had finally found someone who wouldn't die at their first meeting. Now, my name is Toby. If you wish to call me something else go ahead, names mean nothing to me anymore. Over the past 4 years, this organization has sent off members of each major power to attack each other. We are instigating a war between the 5 great villages. Originally, we were just biding time. Waiting for the perfect chance to present itself and make our move. The masked man shifted his gaze down, but that is no longer the case. Sasori lifted his head on interest. What exactly would that be? There must be a reason for us creating a war. He turned his sight onto the leader of their group. Didn't you have a thing against starting wars? The pierced man kept his look forward but still answered, war has taken everything and will bring new to reason. With the end of this next war will be the beginning of a world of peace. What have changed are the circumstances. The masked man pulled out 2 pictures from his sleeve and held them for all to see. Orochimaru narrowed his eyes as he knew who one of these people was. One was a picture of a bandaged man with an X-car, guarded by Anbu. The other was of a blonde boy being carried by another masked assassin. This is a picture of a village elder of Konoha and leader of Root. His name is Dansm, and he has only one goal, the complete control and prosperity of Konoha. He placed one picture in front of the other, showing the boy. And this is his ticket to doing so. This boy is his secret weapon. The one he has been using over 4 years to bring absolute fear into the eyes of those who wish the village harm. And how does this boy do so, exactly? Kisum questioned, as his interest in where this was all going continued to rise. Simple, he is the Jinchuriki of the Kikbi no Kitsune. The members who did not know this man were shocked at what he had said. He is using this boy as a weapon to strike fear into people. He has used assassination attempts, group destruction plans. He is even being used to bring control to his village. I had planned on adding myself into a little argument between the Uchiha and council, but this boy had stopped all plans of a revolution. Despite how he was acting, he was truly disappointed. He wanted the Itachi boy on his side in the future. Oh well. So what does this mean exactly? Kakuzu asked. Yes, so he has a personal toy, so what? Sasori scoffed. Each village has some control of a Biju, so why do we need to be involved? Orochimaru wondered. I know that the Mizukage and Raikage's brother have control of their Biju just fine. Kisum told the masked man. So is this truly a need for our talents? The problem is exactly that. The masked man assured. Now that the villages were in knowledge of how Konoha was using their Jinchuriki, they had to begin planning on how to use their Biju efficiently as well. This would mean that the container's life expectancy was running short and our window was closing. The more danger they are in, the more the beasts will rage and kill the host. If even one Biju were to run off, our real plan would be ruined. Every member took interest in what he had just said. Orochimaru stepped forth and asked what most of them were thinking. What is this real plan? The masked man brought his hand to his face and grabbed the cover. He brought the mask down and exposed his face. One side of his face was badly scarred, old injuries due to how much they had faded. The other half completely fine, like he had been sewn together with a perfectly good replica. But his most defining point was the Sharingan eyes he had staring at the members. It is the completion of the Moon Eye plan. Most of them were in wonder at what he had said. Most except Kisum, who was laughing at the inside joke. Kahahaha, it was you. That explains how the Kurigakure ninja got involved. You've been using that Mizukage to send puppets out to further the war plans. The others were looking between themselves to understand what was happening. But then the Uchiha made himself heard and continued the explanation. We will cause a war between the 5 great nations. During which, to gain the upper hand, each village that joins will bring their Biju to the front lines to win the war. When they do, we will have 8 of the 9 beasts in one location, exhausted and beaten. He knew that none of the villages would pass up the chance to use their ultimate weapons to gain control of the state of war. The other members continued to listen, the pieces of the plan coming together in their heads. With all 5 nations crumbled, we will have no one standing in our way. We will gather the Jinchuriki and their 9 beasts and use their power to give us infinite strength. Then I will pass a Jinjutsu on the moon that all the people will see. And they will be under our control. No fighting, no war, only peace in this god-forsaken world. Everyone was amazed that someone would come up with a plan to kill off hundreds of thousands of people to gain control. It was sick to even think that someone imagined that outcome. And they already knew their answer when the scarred man asked, well, will you join me? Every member looked to each other. And then looked towards the 3 standing before them. The pierced orange-haired man was ready for any task. The blue-haired woman was reluctant with the idea, but ready to follow through. And the scarred Uchiha only stood there, waiting for an answer. Every other member had a smile on their face. With ideas and plans of their own brewing in their head. This would leave them open to do what they always wanted. Money to waste and gather. Bodies to make eternal art of. Bloodline to keep immortal and strong. And battles to their heart's content. When does this all happen? Kisum asked for the group. We used our influence and spies to have set up a single date and location for our final battle. The Valley of the End, on the 10th of October. That will be our judgment day. In 1 week's time, that will be the day the nations will meet to fight. The 4th Great Ninja War will begin at the valley on that day. Dansm said at the front of War Meeting Council. Every able-bodied ninja, Anbu, police corps, and mercenary of the Land of Fire was meeting together to strategize. Even the 2 remaining Sannin had arrived. Tsunade and Jiraiya had been asked by their old sensei to join in the fray once more. He had taken charge of the situation due to Hirazen's inability to adapt to the consequences of war. The villages had declared war on each other after several years of infighting and accusations. Usually this would not be enough to start a war, but members of each village were being killed and sent back in pieces. It was their own way of insulting each other for their failed attempts. But that was not all. Each village had sent their Jinchuriki to kill and fight, copying their tactic and solution to even the odds. Hirazen was swamped with guilt that his village may have just started a war because they wanted power from a single child. And even now, they had planned on using Naruto to solve this war for them. Dansm addressed the people in front of him. We will emerge victorious from the fight. We will gain the recognition and control we have sought for so long. We will prove what it means to be ninjas of the leaf. The whole clearing cheered. Most had not known what war was like, expecting it to be one long battle. But the veterans of the Third War were prepared, ready to experience a second helping of hell. Dismissed. Dan's mortar and all ninja vanished, leaving only him and a crestfallen Hiruzen. The old ninja looked to his friend with a blank look. He had stood there for some time before choosing to break the silence. "You weren't usually this upset. Even in the times when we were ready for war." The hawk addressed his oldest friend. "What is wrong, Hiruzen? What is wrong?" "What is wrong, Dansm, is that we are purposefully starting a massive scale war with the other villages. That we are willing to send off our men to die just so that we can continue to prosper. This is not what we should be aiming for." The wrinkled man yelled with his head in his hands. "We have always been prepared for these circumstances. That is what it means to be a ninja. That we give our lives and beings to the village and our people. But we are using our people to fight our battles. We are using women and children. We have a child on the front lines leading this fight, goddammit. And that child is a proud member of this village. His parents and ancestors fought for what is right. I just tried to continue the path early. You used him for your own gains, Dansm." Hiruzen looked into his friend's eyes. "Don't bring Minato-kun's and Kishina-kun's heritage into the argument. They are not a reason to send a boy to die on the battlefield as he turns 6. If this meant so much to you, Hiruzen, you would have stopped me when I took him 4 years ago. You didn't because you knew my cause was right, even if the execution was wrong. We both want the same thing, we are just willing to take different paths to reach the goal." Hiruzen sat down and breathed in. He looked into the emptiness, just thinking of what to do. "My grandson has started to try and walk on his own feet." Hiruzen changed the subject of the argument. "He keeps falling down but tries again as soon as he can." Dansm walked by him. "Konohamaru-kun seems like he will make a strong ninja someday." The old man tried to reassure his friend. Hiruzen had a sad smile on his face. "I can't help but think that maybe I can help this child better than I did for Naruto-kun. So I have decided that after this war, I will resign as the current Hokage in power." Dansm looked at his friend in mild surprise. He had loved the Hokage job more than anything else he had ever done. "I can't help but think I will never lead that boy guiding him as an authority. Because every time I see myself, I see a shell of my former self. And I can't look at that anymore." Dansm nodded his head, understanding that this was a choice already made, not a decision that could change. Then a rude Anbu appeared before Dansm, kneeling. "Dansm-sama." The armored man said in a rushed tone. "You need to come quickly, we believe that the demon child tried to escape." Dansm stared at the kneeling man and then turned his head to his old friend. The Sandaime could not do anything, knowing he had no power at this point to change anything. Dansm turned back and nodded his head, vanishing along with the Anbu. Leaving Hiruzen Sarutobi to pray for the child's safety. When Dansm entered the narrow hallway, he saw that many of his men had gathered around a single blown cellway. Dansm made his presence known, causing every Anbu member to stand at attention and let their leader through. When he arrived at the front, he found Naruto lying on the ground, simmering. He placed his foot under the boy's chest and flipped him over. His chest was badly burned and his fingertips missing. His arms were close to charcoal black. The boy had passed out from shock and pain, so he placed his hand up and worked the seal. Naruto's body then jerked in pain as he woke up. He stopped and breathed in heavy breaths. He readjusted himself so he had his back on the wall facing Dansm. "Naruto-kun, what are you doing, causing an explosion like this?" he asked the boy in a low tone, already guessing the answer. For the first time, the men around him heard the boy say something other than screams of pain. "I was making a bomb to get out." He lifted his head to look at the bandaged elder. "It was an escape attempt. Yeah, that." Naruto answered for the bandaged man who helped him finish his sentence. Even with Kikbi's help, he had a hard time learning some words. Speaking of Kikbi, he was making a glare at the man that could not see him. This human was talking down to him, even if not directly. "Naruto-kun, when you escape from here, where will you go?" he asked the little charred blonde boy. He tilted his head as his answer. Neither he nor Kikbi had thought that far. Well, he didn't know for certain about Kikbi. "You have nowhere to go if you left. You would be wanted by this village and every other village. You have become an international criminal, hunted by each nation. And you have no family, friends or precious people to call your home." He lowered himself to the boy's eye level. "Face it, if it was not for me, you would not even have a reason to live. You would just be a lifeless child with a demon inside of you. Shunned and hated by all that see you, no one to go to. That is a far worse experience than death, let alone this." He stood back and walked a few feet away. "So don't try to run again, because even if we treat you like this, we are the only ones who will acknowledge you." He then continued his walk and ordered the gathered men to disperse. "I leave the cleanup to you and the waterworks if they come." He addressed one Anbu in the crowd to stay and then faded away in the darkness. The Anbu looked toward the wall to see the child with his eyes covered by his ragged hair. He walked up to the child and bent down before him, absently noticing that the burn marks and fingertips were fading back thanks to the fox. "Hey, are you alright?" he asked the child. The boy lifted his head to show sad eyes. The first real expression the boy had ever shown, and it was one of pain and sorrow. But no tears came from his eyes. "No. He is right. I have nothing but this cell in life." "I didn't like everything he said. I feel mad and something else I don't know," the boy said in an upset voice. "Who are you, mister? You don't hit me when you walked up." The Anbu unhooked his mask and showed Naruto his face. One tired eye and the other scarred and red with figures in it. "My name is Kakashi, Naruto. Kakashi Haddock. And I have been waiting to find a way out of this for you." The boy tilted his head in curiosity. "Me? Why Kakashi-kun?" He still couldn't get the hang of what Kigo was or how to use it. Getting it mixed up with his honorifics. Kikby sighed. "Because I can't sit here anymore watching what is happening." Over the past 2 years, Kakashi was making his life easier to stand in the hellhole. He had stopped any route that thought of beating him up. And added extra helpings to his food so he didn't starve. The only reason he didn't escape with Naruto the first chance he got was because he was so heavily guarded there was no openings. That is, until the war started. If he could find a way to counter the control seal Dan's had on him, then he could free Naruto. He could let him live in a different country, not affected by the war. He owed his sensei that his son would at least live happily. "Why do you care, Kakashi Denoma?" Kakashi is just fine, Naruto. Don't hurt yourself with trying to find a good suffix," Kakashi said with a sweat drop down the back of his head. "Well, why would you help me, Kakashi? Because I know you deserve more than this," the man said with a hint of empathy for the child. "And I would do anything to help you live a better life than this." Naruto looked at the man in wonder. No one had ever shown worry or tried to help him. He felt a warm feeling in his chest, something he had never experienced before. Kikby stared at the man through Naruto's eyes. "My emotion field says that he isn't lying. He truly wants to help the boy. I feel like I have seen this man before. But you don't know me." "That may be true, but I know that you can have a better life. And I will make sure the people I see precious to me love happily." Precious? What does that mean? It means that it is something you can't go on without. That you will do everything you can to make sure that it is safe. That is what precious people are. Naruto's eyes widened. He had never heard anyone say something like that to him. Naruto lowered his eyes so they could not be seen. "So if you want to protect something, they are precious." "Yes. That is what it means." Kakashi lifted his face to look at Naruto and was shocked at what he saw. The boy was smiling, for the first time in his whole life, that boy looked happy. His mouth in a wide grin and his eyes full of warmth. "So, if I wanted to protect you, you would be precious to me? Then I'm not alone after all. Because there is someone else I want to help." Kakashi looked puzzled. "Who?" The boy brought his hand to his seal. "I want to protect Kikby as well." Both Kikby's and Kakashi's eyes widened. "He has helped me so much. I want to make sure he is happy as well." Kakashi looked at Naruto surprised and then softened his eyes. This boy should be free. He took out a blanket and placed it on Naruto and patted his head, earning a smile from the young boy. He told him to get some sleep after a bad day. Kakashi rounded a corner and looked ahead of him. His eyes were blazing with determination. "I will save Naruto from this life. So he can have a better chance. I promise on my ninja way." Naruto settled in the ground and closed his eyes. When he woke up he was in front of Kikby in his smaller form. Naruto walked up to Kikby and asked, "What's wrong, Kikby? You seem sad." The boy asked in innocence. The fox lifted his head to look at the boy. His eyes appeared sorrowful, a far cry from his usual anger. "Why would you say that?" "Huh?" Naruto looked at him in curiosity. What you said to the mask. Why would want to help me?" His teeth flared and his eyes were full of anger. "You have nothing to gain from helping me. So why are you lying?" "I'm not." The boy looked up at the large fox. "You have helped me so much, so I want you to be happy as well." He then gave the fox a happy smile. "You are someone I hold precious. And I want you to be happy as well." The fox looked down at the child. No one had given him a chance since the old man years ago. He thought that he was just going to have to let the cycle of moving from empty container to empty container go on forever. But maybe that wasn't the case. The fox turned around, no longer faxing the young boy. "Leave. Now, okay." The boy agreed and walked off. "See you later, Kikby." "Wait." The fox's voice broke the silence, causing the young child to stop and turn around. "It's not Kikby. That was just something that I have come to agree to." "Oh. Well, what is your name?" "Kurama." The little boy smiled and continued walking out. "I like that. Okay, I will see you later, Kurama." The fox just stared off into the darkness of his cell. Maybe it was time to try and make up for some sins. He would never be truly cleared, but he could try. He looked at his hands and started to practice seals. His upper body was closely similar to human bodies, and that allowed him to make seals. He had only seen it once, but he had already committed it to memory. Is it supposed to be this terrifying? I knew it was scary just being in the village during the last war. If it that it would be easier with everyone together. A young man in a newly made Anbu uniform said to the older ninja next to him. He was experienced and strong, but still had the feeling of war wash over him. It is alright, Itachi-kun. Our youth will allow us to weather any storm or fear as long as we head into the blazing sunlight. Ha 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 ha. This man had a bowl-shaped haircut and huge eyebrows. Beneath his flak jacket was a green spandex jumpsuit. The new man walked up to them in the massive march of soldiers to the battlefield. He was rough-looking, with a shaggy beard and cigarette in his mouth. Guy, stop freaking out, the new meat. I don't think youth will be able to help out in this situation. He said as he brought a light to his cigarette. As he set the drag, a delicate hand grabbed a stick and threw it away. Asuma, if you are so worried about the war, stop smoking and buck up. All that time at the capital with the daimyo must have made you soft. The woman in question was a beautiful, black-haired woman. With blood-red eyes with an additional ring in them. She wore makeup and wore the standard flak jacket. She didn't usually wear this outfit, but due to the war march, she had to wear this as the battle started. Ah, come on Kurenai. That's just mean. Kurenai-san, is this the time for us to be fooling around? Itachi asked the experienced ninja about what to do. No, but this might be the only time we have to stay calm. So enjoy it while you can. A new man made himself heard by the younger group. They all turned to see two people walking by them. One was a tall, aged man with long, spiky white hair. Down his face were two red lines from his eyes and a wart on his nose. He wore the forehead protector of the leaf, but in a green kimono and red haori. Alongside him was a shorter woman with straight blonde hair. She had a purple rhombus shape on forehead, her protector hanging around her neck. She wore the standard uniform with flak jacket, her well-endowed chest pushing the jacket up. Next to her was a young woman with long black hair and black eyes. She as well was dressed in the standard uniform, although her sleeves appeared several sizes too big. If we wanted to relax, we should camp and gamble. I feel like I could win a few rounds of poker as we speak. Nah, Tsunade. If we played right now, all we could take from you would be your rations and weapons. The tall, white-haired man said. Until he turned to look at her, taking many heavy breaths. Unless you want to play strip poker, which in case I'm all in. The blonde woman grabbed the man and proceeded to pummel him into a fine paste. Causing several ninja in the vicinity to step back for safety. Please Tsunade-sama stop. You will kill Jiraiya-sama, Ayu continued. The black-haired woman asked her master. Tsunade let the limp body hit the ground and walked off. She looked to her charge, Shizune, you have to stop being so lenient. Otherwise his kind will never learn. The young ninja group blanked at the carefree attitude the Sannin had while they marched to war. Before any of them could question the motive, Guy made a dramatic pose. Ah, up ahead I see my eternal rival coasting through the crowd. I am sorry my friends but I am off. I will return so that we may enjoy more merry times of youth. And the spandex man ran through the crowd toward a gray-haired young man. The group left behind could only sweat drop at the man's eccentric behavior. Asuma looked toward the older ninja, ready to ask a question plaguing his mind. Hey, does this seem right? I mean we are going to war and we aren't even trying to have negotiations. This isn't like the old man. He referenced to the aged Hokage that was at the front of the march. Dressed in his black war gear, he appeared as he did when he was ready to fight a strong opponent. Alongside him, Dan's walking at a steady pace with cane in hand. Following the leaders of the Konoha army were several Anbu carrying a sealed crate. Making sure that it was safe until their arrival. Yeah actually, you're right. Jiraiya agreed with the young Sarutobi. Gigi is usually so upbeat, but when he asked us to come, he sounded angry and regretful. Like he was forced into this decision. You don't think Dansm had something to do with sensei acting like this, do you? Tsunade questioned her old friend. Well, they never have been on good terms. Only someone like him could cause Hokage-sama to act like that. Shizune added her 2 cents to the conversation. But how does he plan for us to fight in this war? We may have a great military power, but it is foolish to fight against villages that bring their biju into the fray. Kurenai said with a hint of worry laced in her voice. Over the years, father has told me that many of Konoha's enemies are taken care of before they start. All the older ninja looked at the newly promoted Uchiha. That he has been using some kind of weapon to place himself as a figure of power. Itachi looked between all the Uchiha, Hikage, and normal ninja in the march. A weapon that even our village has come to fear. Do you think that crate they have with them is that weapon? I don't know Jiraiya-sama, but whatever is in that crate has given them confidence to take on every power in the world. I ran through the crowd, weaving through the soldiers preparing for war, toward his target. He jumped on the air and landed next to a young gray-haired individual. "Ah, Kakashi, it is so good to see my rival after so long. With your status now in the Anbu, I have searched for a new rival to challenge as the sun rises. But none I meet can compare to your grace and tenacity." He finished his speech with a cheesy grin and a thumb up. Kakashi continued forward, causing Guy to wonder what had happened to his rival. When Kakashi lifted his head to address the lively man. "Guy, this war will not be pretty. We will be using our best moves and skills from the get-go. And I am sure that it will not end well for me in the long run." "What do you mean, Kakashi?" Guy questioned the strange look his old friend had. "I mean that there is something I have to do in the middle of the battle. And when I am done, I will probably be seen as a traitor and criminal." Guy's eyes widened at the lax tone Kakashi used to describe the situation. "Then don't do it. Whatever it is, there must be another solution." Guy tried to reason. "There are a lot of ideas I ran through my head to keep me safe." Kakashi replied with a low tone to his voice. He then looked ahead as the valley came into view. "But this isn't about me, this about saving someone else." "What do you mean someone else?" "When the battle starts, you will understand what I have to do." Kakashi replied to his old rival. Kakashi kept a determined look as he thought of the results. He would be free after his 6th birthday. And he kept that thought as he came to a halt. The entire army stopped as they had come to Hashirama's head. They had arrived at the battlefield. And so had the other armies. Directly across from the Konoha army was the Kumo army. A massive dark-skinned man stood in front of his soldiers. He had white hair combed back with a small beard and detached mustache. He wore an open white haori that showed off an extremely muscular body, made for harsh fighting. Around his neck was a curved 4-point hat with a kanji for lightning. On both his forearms were gold brackets that went to the joints. "Yosh!" the giant man yelled in a grand voice. He turned around to address his forces, men and women dressed in black shirts and white flak jackets over the left shoulder. "All right men, these fools have underestimated. They have sent us bits and pieces of our men back to us. They have killed our comrades and insulted our people. Tried to break Wu village and take our secrets. But no more." He raised his arm in a closed fist. "Now we show them who is the strongest." "Hi!" The army cheered with fist raised. One man in the crowd did not raise to the air, but scratched his head. He was dark-skinned, with a bulbous nose and blonde hair that covered his left eye. With a short sword on his back and the characters for water and lightning on his shoulders. He yawned and addressed the group around him. "Man, I don't know how he does it. Our special ops troops, Yujito-san and B-san go on a boat to avoid detection. He leads us through the tress hundreds of miles to the designation. And he still has so much energy." He complained to his blonde partner beside him. "Well, this war is something we have been preparing for weeks." C explained to Derry. "He had to make sure that he can motivate all of us. This war depends on him." C then quirked an eyebrow. "Well, him and those two." Beside the massive Raikage were a man and woman on each side. On his right, a woman with long blonde hair. A forehead protector partially hidden by her hair. Wearing a short-sleeved black and purple blouse and black pants. "I have to say, this is very nerve-wracking. But I plan to show these other villages how Kumojinch Kriki do it. Right B?" she said to the man opposite the Raikage. Said man was tall, muscular, and dark-skinned, like many of the other soldiers. He had the iron kanji tattooed on his right shoulder. A pair of bullhorns underneath his left eye, which was covered by sunglasses. Adorning his back were 7 sheathed blades. The man placed his hands in front of him in a lazy fashion. "Yo bitches, stand by, I'm about to make you flee. I'ma punch you pussy ass from the valley to the sea. If you think you can play me, you got a shitty ability. I'm the one, the only, motherfucking killer B." The man ended his bad rap striking a pose. Which led to the Raikage bitch slapping him across the forces. All the soldiers only sighed at the brothers' attitude. Between these two armies was the Kiri army. After traveling by the sea and through the neighboring countries, they had finally arrived at the sacred fighting land. When they arrived, they had seen that the land was smaller than they first thought. It then became evident that this was the starting point, but the adjacent lands were all in the crossfire. At the front of the army was Yugura, the 4th Mizukage. On his back was a large staff with uneven flower petals and a hook at the end. Behind him were his forces wearing black pant and shirts, in grey flak jackets. Out of the forces walked up a beautiful auburn-haired woman. Her face framed by 2 bangs. She went to the Mizukage to grab his attention. "Mizukage-sama, all of our forces are ready to fight." "Good," the young-looking man said over his shoulder, "that will be all. Join the rest in the wait." The slender woman nodded her head and began the trek next to a man with an eye patch. She stopped and regarded the mage once more. "Mizukage-sama, are you sure this is the correct course to take? Our military power isn't even close to adequate enough to fight this battle. We will stand in this battle." Yugura said without any hesitation. "But without the 7 swordmen, we don't have enough power to fight back." Even with 2 Biju, our forces will be slaughtered. Durumi. He said with a powerful tone, causing the woman to stop her questioning. He turned around to look at her, this is a fight we will stand in. We may not have the numbers, but our forces have more than enough strength to make up for it. You're dismissed. The woman bowed her head before she heard one last command. Send up the other would you? We need our main forces here. Moments later, a young man joined Yagura on his perch. He wore the standard outfit of Kiri, but had long brown hair that covered his left eye. He walked up to the Mizukage and asked, do you think we will survive this fight? We will, Yagura assured. We will show the world why our village is called the Bloody Mist. Unbeknownst to the rest of the army, as Yagura looked forward, the image of a Sharingan shadowed over his eyes. On the opposite side of the valley stood the Iwa army. The army stood in red suits and brown jackets. In front of the forces was a small man with a big red nose in a green and yellow jacket. He had his Kage hat wrapped around his neck. He was currently hunched over in pain, clutching his aching back. Oh. I knew we shouldn't have passed through to Kigakure. I should have just flown my way here. Ah, come on old man. A large man with a beard told the short elder. If you had flown, everyone else would get jealous. We had to stay together in the walk. Oh shut up Kitsuchi. Just help me with my back. The old man complained to his son. The man grabbed the old man by the head and legs and pulled. Earning a painful scream from the Tsuchikage and a pop from his spine. Aw. Not like that. He said as he felt his back in place again. He readjusted himself and started to float to talk to the tall man better. Is everyone prepared? More or less. They're ready to show what they got. Lenoki smirked at what his lieutenant had said. He remembered what his master always told him, the spoils of war went to the winners. And if he was right, they were about to be loaded. Kitsuchi regained the old man's attention, Gramps, they are ready by the way. Lenoki looked behind him at the new arrivals. One was an older-looking man with red hair with a mustache and beard. He wore a large headpiece with a black armor piece that ran across his. The other was a tower of a man. Dressed from head to toe in red armor with a straw hat. He had a strong but uninterested look on his face. As he stared out into the upcoming war zone. Rumshai, Han, I'm so glad that both of you could come. We will need you. Whatever old man, Rumshai said with slight disdain, just make sure you leave us alone when this is over. Beside him, Han only made an affirmative grunt. The little boy whimpered. He was hunched over, clutching his head as the voice kept whispering to him. Mother, please, make it stop. The little boy had red hair and black shadows around his eyes. On his head was the character for love. In front of him stood a man who looked like an older version of the boy. He was dressed in a black ninja outfit under a white haori with green highlights and a hat. Behind him, a man who had his head wrapped and half his face under a sheet appeared. Kazekage-sama, we have the gold dust ready if anything goes wrong. He said as he looked aside at the troubled boy. Chiyo-sama also has the sealing process prepared if we decided to capture any others like him. He nodded his head. This was the chance to reclaim Suna's former glory. He turned to his son, Gaara. The boy lifted his head to show eyes that showed a tortured crazy soul. Those men are here to kill you. The boy then started to pull himself in, trying to make himself smaller. All those men have come to kill you, and we won't stop them. He looked down at his son. What will you do? Gaara stopped shaking, letting his hands fall from his hair. He lifted his head to show eyes that were not human. They had turned black, with a 4-point star and 4 dots around it. He laughed as sand started to form claws around his arms. Kasama. Kasama. The valley was covered with ninja on the edges, ready to fight at the call. Ansem stepped forward. We started this, we may as well finish. He motioned for the Anbu to bring the sealed casket. What is that thing? Jiraiya asked no one in particular. Just stating a thought in his head. Hand signs went through fast as the covering fizzled away. The guards grabbed the sides of the Pakage and pushed forward. From there, a tired and weak blonde boy slid out. The ninjas around them all had surprised looks on their faces. If they were suspecting something from the basket, it wasn't a boy that was having trouble standing up. What the hell? Why is a kid here? Hey, haven't we seen him before? Kakashi, is this what you were talking about? Jiraiya looked in horror at the sight. Me Minato. At second glance, he saw him better. And then Naruto. Sensei, what the hell is this? Tsunade asked her former teacher, who could only mash his teeth so hard he started to bleed. Sensei. Now, Dansum brought up his hands, it begins. The little boy's body jerked as red bubbles grew all over him. And as soon as he was covered, his skin started to peel off. Now, it will end. Finally, in front of them was not the boy, but a black 9-tailed feral monster. Iya. The little Kikbi sprinted forward, leaving a crater and dust in its place. It jumped into the valley and ran on all fours. Charge. All 5 forces jumped into the clearing. The Nibi and Hachibi coming into existence, taking a large portion of the clearing for themselves. Jutsu and weapons were thrown from each direction. Fires and blasts going off into echoes. The previous islands was dead. From a high point, several men watched a battle that had been raging on for 12 hours. The valley was no more, just another destroyed patch of land. Right from the start, the heavy hitters were throwing out their best moves. Lenoki used his dust release to fight against the freed tail beast, damaging the hulking monster like they were nothing. But as he was distracted, he didn't see the bubble technique that hit him hard. He was still flying, but he had to keep taking breaks to catch his breath. He was using his lightning release armor to destroy any defense he came upon. He defeated every ninja in his way until he hit a snag. A woman he identified as Tsunade of Konoha had stopped his charge. They had planned to just cross fists and move along. That was 4 hours ago, and they were still at it strong. But every side was experiencing casualties from the Jinchuriki and Biju. Almost instantly, the monsters and their containers had met to fight in the field. The Kikbi rushing around the Hachibi, dodging its attacks due to its smaller frame. So each of the Jinchuriki entered their second stage. The fight being determined by will and ability. Except for Gaara and the Hachibi, they had just kept their full released form and shot off wind bullets in every direction. After some time, every ninja was coming to their end. More than half of the fighting forces were dead now. The only ones who were still fighting were the best of the best. Everyone else either passed out or died. It looks like it is time for us to make our move. To change the world for the greater through this final war. A red-haired man in a mechanized contraption said. Haha, well this is interesting. Orochimaru said as he licked his lips. So many old faces, so little time. I know what you mean. Nah, Toby, have you been manipulating the Mizukage through all this? Kisame had been watching his old leader use his best moves to fight off those around him. He then had a smaller grin on his face. Wish you could do better with the orders, most of the Kiri are gone. It doesn't matter. Toby shrugged as he walked around with explosions in the distance. When we are done, their deaths will have helped lead us to peace. He looked toward Nagato. Can you send him out? Yes. The pierced man walked next to the mechanized human. Yahiko is ready to deliver us to heaven. He will help fight against the Biju. Then we will be here until the first hit. The walking corpse left the mountains and ran to the former valley. Toby gathered all the Akatsuki around him, then sucked them into his alternate dimension. Keeping them together until he appeared at the field again. He looked over at the remaining member. Are you coming? He questioned the blue-haired woman. No. She said with no room for argument. I will stay with Nagato as he uses his power to attack. Without the use of multiple bodies, he could use more chakra for Yahiko's attacks. But that didn't mean that the attacks didn't have as much strain on her friend's body. The masked man nodded before swirling around his eye and disappearing from sight. Urkiri. Kakashi yelled as he thrust his lightning-covered hand through his opponent's chest. The Sunanin fell to the ground as he retracted his hand. After he did, he noticed that most of his vision had started to blur. He had been fighting for too long now. Since the fight started, he had kept close to the Kikbi-influenced boy. Making sure that the kid was still alive through the fight. In doing so, he had put his body through too much to keep close to the monster fights. His body had been run ragged, blood dripping from his eyes and arms. His legs feeling like jelly under his weight. But he had made sure that he could still fight and get Naruto to safety when he had the chance. Luckily for him, he had joined with some of the best in Konoha to watch each other's backs. These last few hours were a lot easier knowing you had an Uchiha, Sannin, and someone like Guy to help you along. Along the way, he had to answer a lot of questions. Kakashi, I need some answers now. The old ninja said to the young man as he smashed a Kumonin with his lashing hair. Kakashi slashed an upcoming charger with his blade, killing the man. Danzm took the Jinchuriki of the Kikbi and made him into a weapon. He has kept Naruto in a cell for several years and used him for his needs. Asuma held off an attacker with his chakra blades. How the hell don't we all know about this? He blew everyone back with his dust cloud technique. Everyone was sworn to secrecy to not tell anyone this secret. Even Sandaime Sama could not do anything against it. So Jiji isn't to blame, thank God. Why hasn't he stopped this? He has been overruled by the council on this decision. He has fought for his freedom for years but can't do anything about it. Kurenai put several ninja in a jinjutsu that held them at bay. But why do you know about this? Why did you willingly join the route? I was asked by the Sandaime to check on the condition of Naruto. Everyone listening beside Kakashi looked between the old man swatting people away with a giant staff and the demon boy crushing people in his way toward the Iwa Jinchuriki in armor. Repositioning themselves into a tight group, they all started taking heavy, deep breaths. So over the years, I have been watching over Naruto. Making sure he heals properly, eats his food, everything he needs to survive. But lately, I knew that it wouldn't be enough to watch him, so I have been waiting. Itachi blew a great fireball jutsu at those around, boiling off their skin and melting their eyes. Waiting for what exactly? This battle. The others looked at him like he was crazy. I will use this battle to take Naruto away and to safety. I will be charged for treason in doing so, but that won't stop me. The only problem is Dansm. They all looked to the man who had been worn out after applying chakra for 10 hours straight. His seal will cause Naruto pain until it can be undone. So I know this may be too much to ask, but can you guard us as we escape? He turned around to acknowledge the group around him, unknowingly leaving himself wide open to an attack from behind. But before the attack connected, dynamic entry. Guy jumped up and made a beautiful side kick that sent the ninja soaring into the edges of the valley. He landed and gave Kakashi a big grin. I had worried that you had lost your way, my friend. But risking your life for the safety of a child, that is the rival I have strived to defeat. I will lend you my strength. The others nodded, agreeing with Guy's over-exuberant words. Now all they needed to do was survive. As the last of the small fry fell, the others took in as many breaths as possible before the big fish. Now, they needed to fight off the Biju, Jmunin, and Kages that were left. As they paused, they saw something floating in the air. After some time everyone else stopped their battles. The Tsuchikage had stopped his dust style before hitting Hiruzen. Tsunade and Ace stopping mid-brawl to gaze up at the sky. Mei, Darui, and Kitsuchi stopped to measure the situation that could play forth. As everyone was silent, Jiraiya's eyes widened as he recognized the flying figure. Yahiko? Shinra Tensei. That was what everyone heard before the explosion went off over the Biju. As the dust settled, the scene could be better observed. A giant hole had been created from the mighty push sent down from Pain. At the center of the hole, the Jinchuriki had all passed out from the force of the attack. Near ground zero, all the other soldiers had been pushed back, buried by rubble and the dead bodies of their fallen comrades. The last of the Anbu, Special Ops, and Kages could only view as from the center, walked out two men. One was the man that created the blast, walking out like he had done nothing more than swat a fly. The other was a man who had appeared out of thin air, his body coming out of a spiral in space, which had centered itself on his eye. He walked in front of the other man and grabbed the attention of the ninja around him. Hello everyone, we are sorry to interrupt your little spat, but we have important matters to take care of. My colleagues and I are here to take your little bundles of joy behind me. The ninja around him widened their eyes at the crass way to say he was taking the Jinchuriki. I know this seems inconvenient, but we didn't start this war for nothing. From his eye, another hole in space appeared. This time, unleashing 5 men that joined alongside the already present 2. Members of the fallen ninja all let out gasps at the sight of some of the most wanted men appearing out of nowhere. Each member jumped off to a different location. They all landed in front of old friends they hadn't seen in quite some time. But the masses happy, Toby turned around to collect his prize. Alright, time to cash up. As he went to grab the first one he could find, a kunai sailed right through his head. As if irked, he turned his head to see his old friend struggling to stand up. I won't let you take them. Kakashi yelled as blood seeped out of his wounds. Behind him, his comrades all struggled but ultimately stood back up. Toby walked next to Pain, bringing no attention to the ninja glaring at him. Zetsu, make sure they won't get up as we finish here. From the ground came a black and white creature that nodded its head and spilt. The white one left and attached to the Jinchuriki and siphoned their chakra. The black one took a stance and prepared to attack. Shall we finish these fools off? Pain nodded his head as he let his power seep out. Hello, sensei. The snake-like man said as he walked up to his former teacher and leader. I haven't seen you in such a long time. He grew a smirk that would send fear into any great shinobi's heart. You've grown old. Orochimaru. The old Hokage had the look of pure fear on his face as his old pupil slowly walked forward. While the Hokage was covered in injuries, blood seeping from his wounds into a puddle under him, the snake man hadn't aged a single day. Why are you here? Well, Saratobi-sensei, I have found myself a nice little clique that piques my interest. You always told me that I should try and get out more, make new friends. Orochimaru said as Snake slithered out of his sleeve, regurgitating a magnificent sword that fell into his hand. Although I had originally planned to join in a couple of years, they just couldn't do this without me. The Hokage stood back up, his quarrel with the Tsuchikage all but forgotten. Now his attention was on his twisted student. What are you trying to do here? He gritted his teeth and clenched his fist until he reached blood. Why are you here? He screamed. We're going to save this world, sensei. No more pain, suffering, death. They will help me find the immortality I have searched so long for. As he walked forward, he detected danger and jumped back. Where he stood now was a vaporized crater. He looked up to see a midget floating with a clear cone in his hand. Do all of your men have a strange tendency to defect? The Tsuchikage said with a wry smirk. After all this time and I still have to out your men in their place, old man. If I'm old, you must be dust at this point, Lenoki-san. He grabbed his staff and entered his battle stance. You should sit down before you become a cripple. I'll have to show my old pupil his place. You think you can, sensei? Orochimaru brought up his blade and smashed it against his sensei's staff. You should stop before you die. I won't stop, Orochimaru. Hiruzen swiped his staff, forcing the man back. I won't stop until I have fixed everything I've done wrong. He said as he charged forward. Well. Kisame stepped forward, meeting the group in front of him. Sasori walking by his side. It looks like I get to fight some strong people after all. In front of him were some of the best ninja from the other villages fighting in a cluster after the bomb. Kisame, what are you doing? Mei asked as she struggled to rise up. Oh, I don't know you, but you're from the village and still alive, so you must be good. He had a grin as he raised his blade and crushed the ground. Gio Baba, it is so good to see you again. How have you been? Sasori asked his fallen grandmother. That's impossible, how are you still like that? The old woman said in shock at her grandson's eternal appearance. I found a way to become strong, which I can't say the same to you though. He grabbed his cloak and ripped it off, revealing a puppet-like body. With a wire spinning out of his stomach and a strange core in his chest. The wire lifted and aimed toward his old granny. Here, let me put you out of your misery. The wire spiked forward, aiming for the old woman's head. But before contact was made, a large rock formation made a shield in front of her. From behind, Kitsuchi grabbed the woman and dived before the wire pierced through the rock. He stood back up with the elder woman under his arm. Hey granny, I know we've been fighting and everything, but do you mind if we beat this little bastard into the ground first? He waited for an answer from the elder ninja, but nothing happened. He looked down and shook the limp body. Oh shit. He then got headbutted in the chin, backing him fall and grab his chin in pain. The elderly woman landed on her feet and laughed. Haha, I got you, did you think this old hand would die so easily, kiddo? She turned and regarded her grandson. Now I think it's time you get a spanking for misbehaving so long, young man, summoning her Chikamatsu collection. Meanwhile, a giant shark of amorphous water was flying through and attacking anyone it saw. Ha, this is what I've wanted for so long. Kisame stopped and had a sad look on his face, too bad none of you can still fight. He redirected it to the first Kirin he could see. Mei lifted her head to see a hulking beast coming at her. She tried to move, but could not summon the strength to stand. She resigned herself to her fate until it did not come. Storm release. Laser circus. Dozens of flying lights shot up and shredded the shark, turning it to water instantly. Mei lifted her head to see a shaggy Kumonin standing between her and Kisame. Man, it isn't enough that we have fought for hours, now monsters are trying to snuff us out. He turned around and offered his hand to her. Sorry about this, but could we work together to put this guy down? Or else we may not make it back. Mei smiled and took his outstretched hand. Sure, but let me finish him off, okay? I feel like I have to put this man down for our village. She turned to the blue man and went through a series of hand seals before leaning back and breathing in. Lava release. Melting apparition. Mei spit out a wave of lava that spread over Kisame's head. The shark man dove out of the way to avoid the boiling rock. The lava dissolved into the ground and caused smoke to raise into the air. Mei smirked and wiped spit off her chin. I hope you're ready. I'm going to show you how our village can survive without your help. I didn't think that there was still a bloodline in the village. He lifted his head and showed his shark teeth to the world, Samahata fusing to his arm. Interesting. Tsunade looked to the left, her vision coming close to a tunnel. The Raikage she had been fighting was not in good shape. His Haori long abandoned and his arm braces had cracked and fallen off. Tsunade had broken several of his ribs and got many good shots on his head. Of course, she was in no place to talk. He had grabbed her left arm and broken it completely. And when she was getting away, he had landed a powerful hook into her stomach. She had been coughing up blood for most of the fight after that, but that didn't matter right now. They were both in bad shape and this man in front of them did not look like he had any room for negotiations. Why did I come here? The tall, dark man wondered out loud. I felt like something familiar was here, but all I see are two broken bodies. Who the hell are you? Get out of my way, I have to check B and Yujito. Said as he raised to his feet, blood seeping from lacerations and open wound, but paying no mind to them. I don't know you, Kumo boy, so it must be this young girl I've come to meet. He walked closer, only for the Raikage to appear from behind and try to smash him into the ground. Kakuzu felt the presence come up behind and jumped back. As he turned, a fist almost made contact, but he ducked under. He jumped and kicked A in the face, only stunning the massive man for an instant before he grabbed the outstretched leg and swung him around. Kakuzu shifted his arm forward, black threads shooting out of his arm and into the Raikage. The threads dug into the man's torso and arms, blood dripping down the string. Kakuzu lifted the massive man, then used his power to smash the human tank into the ground multiple times. When he was finished, he retracted his threads and walked up to the downed man. When he came close, A lifted his head and made a wide swing at him. Kakuzu jumped back and gained his balance. You can still stand after all that. Impressive, more threads released themselves. I think I'll take your heart for spare keeping. As he walked forward, he felt a painful stab in his chest. Looking behind him, he saw the former broken woman had punched right through his heart. Her visible wounds disappearing right in front of him. He ripped his body of her arm and stumbled. "How are you moving? Weren't you die smashed?" Before he could finish, a came up from behind and brought his connected hands down on the surprised man. A large crater had been created from the massive force, leaving a messy blood stain in the middle. He looked up from his work and up at the princess. "Finish this later." Tsunade nodded her head and started to move toward her injured comrades. But as they both went their way, they were hit by an unexpected attack. "Don't turn your back, or you may find yourself dead." When they both turned around, they were hit by two devastating attacks. By a massive current of shredding wind, cutting through his lightning release armor and sending the effect back at him. Bolt Tsunade was hit by a strong fire stream, singing through her clothes and burning her skin. They both landed on their backs as Kakuzu came into sight. He was no longer a tall man, but a freak of nature. Thousands of black threads pouring out of the stitches all over his body. Hundreds pouring out of his mouth, like an octopus. Among the threads, on his shoulders, were a red and blue mask. The mask's mouths still open, with smoke and gas coming out of the open holes. "Now I know what made me come here. That healing technique is the same as his. You're his relative, right, Hashirama Senju's?" Tsunade raised her bruised body, her burn marks disappearing faster by the second. "Wow, this must be fate. He disappears and I couldn't get the rematch I've been waiting for. So I get the chance to fight his family. My grandfather died, so if I have to, I will destroy you." Tsunade reassured as she lifted herself up. "Oh no, that's not true." Tsunade's eyes widened as the freak continued his explanation. "After his death was made public, I wanted to come pay my thanks. Maybe loot the corpse and sell it off, the price of a Hokage's body fetches a high price." Tsunade mashed her teeth together in pure anger at the man in front of her. "But when I came to it, the coffin wasn't carrying his body." What? Tsunade's eyes widened at him. "Oh, the coffin was full, but with a different body. Those that didn't know the man personally probably wouldn't realize the difference. But I could tell that, just from our fight, that it was a fake." Kakuzu made a wide grin with the thread still in his mouth. "You've all been lied to." From behind, I tackled the monster and threw him away. Kakuzu Slittle looked at his opponents. Tsunade and A were standing side by side, ready to fight. "Whatever the reason may be, that will not stop me. I will take you down, you monster." And so it begins. Jiraiya jumped and tried to attack Pain, but once again, he used his strange gravity technique to push him back. When he landed, he dove forward with a Rasengan in hand, but Pain dodged and brought out another black stake. He dodged the weapon's thrust and placed himself on only his hand. Using that to spin around, he kicked the man in his chest, sending him several meters away. But he only flipped and landed on his feet. No change in his expression. He looked over to see Kakashi and Guy still fighting the masked individual. After 30 minutes of fighting and no results, it looked like this man was invincible. He could phase through any attack, and that meant he could always keep moving. They thought that there was no chance to win until they made a discovery. When he was about to attack, he made himself physical to make contact. But when they send an attack at him during this open chance, he was vulnerable to attack. So they had figured that if he came close to making contact, they would try to hit him and make him phase through. This little back and forth had been happening for a while now. It still looked like they had a better chance of winning than he did. Around him, Itachi, Asuma and Kurenai had passed out from exhaustion. And Jiraiya was not far off from joining in. Yahiko was overpowering him in the ninjutsu department. When he came close, he would be blown away. If he gained distance, he was forced back in seconds. "Yahiko, make this stop. What happened to you?" He tried to remember back to that little boy who had a huge grin on his face. That little shit that promised to take out all evil in the world. "Where's Conan? Where's Nagato?" "Sensei, I think you have it wrong." Jiraiya stopped his questioning to listen to what he said. "Conan is fine, but you see," he raised his eyes to look at the man with his Rinnegan. "I'm Nagato. Yahiko's died long ago." "What? What are you talking about?" "I'm saying that Yahiko saved us long ago. He sacrificed himself so Conan and I could live." He just kept looking at his sensei with disdain. "When you left, our world crumbled. We lost everything, so we decided to fight for what we can save. I will use Yahiko to usher in the world where no one dies. I will save this world." "Nagato, not like this. There has to be a better way." Pain raised his outstretched hand. "Sorry sensei, this is all we can do." With a push came a Shinra tensei that sent the Sannin back. "Why are you doing this, you bastard?" Kakashi yelled from his kneeled position. Next to him, Guy had been hit and was coughing up blood. "Sorry, but I'm going to take these things with us." He referred to the weakening Jinchuriki behind him. "Why do you want them?" Kakashi tried to ask. "I need them to save the world. They are strong, but they have no purpose but to help me with my cause." He started to walk to the bodies, no longer giving the weakened ninja his attention. They don't deserve this. They don't have to become weak. He doesn't need to be a weapon. Kakashi tried to stand, but only stumbled over. He raised his head with set eyes. Please leave them. No. Toby stopped and turned his head. I will use them to save everyone. Themselves, you, Rin. He came to the closest body, a small blonde boy with whiskers. Sorry Kakashi, this world will end now. In an empty space, the fallen ninja disappeared. The crumbled rock and dead bodies all but vanished from sight. The assembled injured, the cowering Anbu, and the battling heroes were no longer there. But something else did appear. In the open space were 8 massive multi-tailed beasts. All assembled around in a rough circle. And all of them looking at each other, a tanky, cat, turtle, ape, horse, slug, ox, and fox gathered together. They had been chatting for the whole fight. Wahahaha. Then the fuckhead blew himself up right in front of the kid. Then finally, I got to have some fun. Until that asshole father of his used the gold dust on me. Always ruining the fun. Shukaku told his siblings after such a long time. God Shukaku, control yourself. Madatabi said while she licked her paw. We don't see each other for decades, and the first thing you tell us is your adventures of slowly falling into madness. At least he is set free, not only am I sealed, but Yugura is under control too. Isobu said as he laid on his shell. It feels like I had fallen so low. Not just you my brother, we all feel this grand dissatisfaction. Son Gok said to his turtle brother, petting his shell. These humans have insulted us for too long now. Locking us up, calling us these unfavorable names. This man has been using my power without consent. Gok slammed his hand on the ground, I never should have told him my name. It doesn't get so bad. Kokum said from his spot. Every now and then, I get out to stretch my legs, but we get called out by that old fool. No free space I tell you. All I want is to soak in the fresh water. Seiken groaned to his family. But Utakata can't let me out. Whoever has your guy Isobu, he is a dick. Well, we get on alright, but my guy is annoying. Jiki reassured his brother. Speaking of that control guy, I think he is coming in on our turf. He brought everyone's attention to the growing figure. What is he doing? Gok voiced his thought. I think he is trying to take us. The eight-tailed told them. Hey Kurama, what do we do? He looked to his brother, but got no answer. Kurama. Every sibling looked to the fox and saw that he was looking down, eyes shadowed. You know, I hated these humans for so long. All of you must have to, right? He lifted his head, eyes full of sadness. I wanted to kill them all. Wanted? Madatabi questioned her Borther's wording. Kurama looked to his family with nostalgia. Over these decades, I've kept being pushed into a cage. I thought that I would never find something that could understand our loneliness. He grew a small smile, thinking of what Naruto went through. But then I remembered what the old man told us all those years. Every Biju had a look of longing in their eyes. Remembering the old ninja that had given them their life. We all came back and he told us that we would never be alone. And I finally realized something. He looked back at what Naruto said last week. These people we are with, they can understand us. And I feel like I could even help them. What? Gok questioned Kurama. But you always hated these humans. What changed? I just realized that I can also hope to see a smile on someone just like the old man. He lowered his head with a big grin. I can tell just who has the bad intentions out there. So I am breaking out. What? Every Biju screamed at the same time. Hakim came forward. How can you do that? It's impossible. It's impossible because we want to get our whole being out. If you leave behind the chakra and core, you can make an ethereal body. But that isn't enough. Shukaku told him. If you leave behind the core, that's your chakra and thoughts left behind. Plus you can't leave them, the ethereal body is still connected to the core and seal. Kurama nodded his head at Isobu. Yeah. Which means that you can only create a chakra body as long as you are near your host. If you go too far, it will dissolve and you will be pulled back. I know. Iki went up to Kurama. What are you planning? He said with worry in his voice. Being with B so long was affecting him too much. Listen, when you see Chimei, tell him I'll see you. The others were about to voice their thoughts but he was already fading away, purposefully leaving their clearing. Kurama lifted his head and walked to the cage's bars. He took a step past the bar, feeling a spike go through his body as he pulled forward. Dan's control seal appeared all over his body, pushing him back. But he continued forward until finally he passed through. He looked down to see his body had become translucent. Then behind him to see a second body, this one without eyes or a mouth, with a thin line still connected from his tail to the empty slate. Now, it ends. Toby came close to the small, unmoving body. Under his mask, he smirked. He reached down, but stopped when Naruto's body jerked up. As Toby brought his hand back, Naruto became covered in a clearer version of the bubbles before, not changing his appearance. The bubbles gathered over the child's body. They reached up until they came towering over where they originated. Everyone who could still move looked to the center as a tower of bubble came into being. The tower started to expand, forming claws and paws. They made 4 legs, 9 tails, and a fox head. Everyone looked in surprise as before their eyes, the 9 tails was formed. Atop the edge of the valley, unharmed except for fatigue, was Dansm. The old ninja stared and grew a smile, shaking from excitement that his weapon had finally arrived. Ha! The Kikbi brought its claw in a swipe, smacking white Zetsu into the sky. And with the other hand, smashed down on black Zetsu, burning it with a touch of pure chakra. He looked down at the masked man and grinned. Hey, haven't we met before? Oh right, you thought you were big shit and controlled me. It brought its head down to look at the man. Wanna give it another go? What the hell? What is this? Toby stepped back. Even with his phasing, he was still intimidated by the massive creature. The Kikbi raised its hands and brought them in. This is judgment, human. And in an instant he went through 9 hand seals and stopped. That jutsu. Hiruzen gawked as he watched a demon finish his hand seals. Stopping his battle against Orochimaru with Linoki. It can't be. When Kurama finished, a feeling of dread was drawn all over the valley. Unbeknownst to them, behind the Kikbi, manifested a deity. The Shinigami. The death god. The final vision had appeared behind the Kikbi's back. Aw, Kikbi, what a pleasure. I haven't seen you for 6 years. What are you doing? I'm making a contract. You? You understand you'll die if you do. Yeah. Listen, can I take more souls than one? Yes, you have enough power and soul to take dozens of men. Are you sure about this? Kurama smirked as multiple god hands came out of its chest. Judgment Day. The hands flew out, arsing in the sky before fell into their targets. Dozens of rude Anbu felt a cold chill as the hands landed on them. The Akatsuki members froze as their bodies didn't move. Toby looked from his hand and looked up at the giant god, feeling fear for the first time in years. Damn, Dansm tried to run, to escape. He made the seal in hopes that he would be freed. Around his body, Kurama experienced pain as the seals grew over his body. But he continued his search, grabbing all he could find. And no, not like this. I tried to save this village, these people. Dansm screamed out in desperation, I was a hero. And then silence, his body fell forward, careening into the floor of the valley. Hundreds of people fell as they died, bodies becoming cold instantly. All the hands returned to Kurama, him screaming in pain as the souls invaded his body. But finally, it stopped. A massive Shikifjin appeared on Kurama's translucent body as it was fading away. Kurama closed his eyes, ready to accept his fate. But opened his eyes when he heard a weak voice. Kurama. The fox looked down, seeing the damaged boy had partially regained consciousness. The fox saw that Dansm's seal over the original one had faded, a result of the man dying. Didn't want you to see me like this, kid. Thought you would sleep through this and just wake up happy. But we're never this lucky, huh? He looked down to see that the boy's attention was passing in and out, a result of the pain. I guess you probably won't hear everything I say. He smiled and looked down at the boy. Listen close, kid. Naruto opened his eyes weakly. The day will come that you be set free. You will probably go through a lot of trials and pain. But hey, that is just the way things go. His body was fading, leaving only his upper body. You will probably want to cry sometimes, but don't. That will show that you can't take it. Take the pain, carry it, and find what you can protect. And then, when you are free, when you can see the world with your own 2 eyes, then you can cry. As it reached his head, he saw that Naruto had passed out. Oh well, the message is still there. And as the last of his face disappeared, his last words floated with the wind. Thank you, Naruto. Silence, nothing but the patter of falling rain in the valley. After the host was gone, the Shinigami was still there, floating over the landscape. It looked down at the boy. And let out a sigh. 6 years ago, your parents used that same jutsu to save your life. Somehow, people can't help but want to help you. Such a strange child. It looked around at the carnage that had taken place. But I don't think you can live in this world. Too much pain and destruction has centered itself around you. It unsheathed the blade in its mouth and made a slash in the space before him. A small hole appeared in the air, a different landscape could be seen through the hole. He lowered his hand and used his power to pick the boy up. You will still experience pain, even in this new world. But perhaps you can learn to be strong here. To make sure you don't lose any more loved ones. The Shinigami tossed the boy into the hole and closed the portal. Then fading from existence until he was needed again. Cough cough, nah Naruto. Kakashi jumped down the crater to find the boy. Naruto, where are you? He screamed as he desperately tried to find the boy among the Jinchuriki. But found nothing. Around him, Jinchuriki stirred awake. Moments later, ninja from each village arrived, helping the people to their feet. Kakashi, where is he? Hiruzen slid down the crater to arrive at the young man. He could only shake his head as he couldn't find the boy. Hiruzen gasped and closed his eyes as tears flowed down them. The surviving ninja crowded around the crater. The original force's numbers reduced to a fraction. Those still in fighting condition helped those they found still breathing. "Well, it looks like we have finished for this battle," Lunoki stated as he floated to the center of the trench. Around him were the Kage, Mei, the two Sannin, and Guy. "It looks like we have been made fools of in this war. Used like puppets," I said as he hefted B and Yujito onto his shoulders, ignoring his wounds. "I say we end this war for now, but this doesn't solve our problems. We will set up a Kage meeting to understand the situation." "No." Hiruzen replied to the Raikage suggestion. He sent Enma back and grabbed his helmet. "I resign as the Hokage of the Hidden Leaf," he declared as he removed his helmet, hearing several gasps from around him. Next to him, Kakashi lifted his hand and removed the headband. "I resign as a Junin and Anbu of the Hidden Leaf." He dropped the metal to the floor, letting it clatter. Hiruzen looked to the man beside him. "Are you sure, Kakashi-kun? I promised that I would save him, promised on my ninja way." He clenched his hand in anger. "But I failed to do that. I failed to save my friends, my teacher, and now his son. How can we call ourselves ninja if we can't even save the life of a child?" The fourth Kazekage walked up to him. "That is our way, boy. We can't save everyone, but we try our best." "How's this the best?" He gestured to the dead bodies surrounding the clearing. "We started a war from a misunderstanding. We sacrificed thousands of lives because we were manipulated. These people almost died." He waved his arms to the Jinchuriki, who all had some form of consciousness by now. "We call ourselves heroes and legends. Shadows that go undetected, even from the light. But we've been in the dark so long, we can't even help our own people." All the Kages looked toward the Jinchuriki and survivors. "Maybe if we stopped fighting for power, we could try to help more people." Hiruzen walked out of the crater before turning back around. "Because if it takes this much pain and suffering to solve our problems, I'd rather try to stop those problems altogether." As he turned back around, he saw every Konoha ninja still alive look at him. Jiraiya stepped forward from the bunch and removed his headband, following in his sensei's example. Soon enough, each of the ninja removed their band before they started the trek home, leaving the other nations to think of what they said. "They're fools, you know. That is what it is meant to be a ninja since we started," Lunoki stated before he looked up at the cloudy sky, rain washing away the dirt and blood. He smirked, "But then again, we go through each day to hope we may make up for what we did yesterday," he said before floating away. "It appears that we have many mistakes to think of tomorrow, but maybe we will find a better answer to them then," Mei said before she assisted her Mizukage up, realizing that he had been freed from the hypnotism. "Yujito, can you hear me?" The two bodies on his shoulders shook their heads in affirmation. "I'm sorry it took me so long to try and help you." He walked up the trench. "Maybe we can fix this somehow." All that was left was the Kazekage, standing in the crater, by his slowly recovering son. The man looked to the sky and took a deep breath. He squatted down and picked his unconscious child and left. "It will never be enough to make up for what I have done. And someday, you may take your revenge on me. But you were never hated, Gaara, just the child of unfortunate circumstance. You were never a mistake, and I wish I realized that sooner." On October 10th, the Fourth Great Ninja War commenced in the Valley of the End. This was a battle between Konohagakure, Kumagakure, Sunagakure, Kurigakure, and Iwagakure. Started from killed soldiers and invaded nations. But it was just a ploy from a shadow organization by the name of Akatsuki to cause war between the nations and destroy the strongest ninja forces in the land. They had, in an attempt to control the world, manipulated the villages to their whim. To capture the Jinchuriki of each village, they sacrificed too many lives. In the end, the battle had been stopped by the Kikbi no Imko. The supposed demon of the ninja world saved the world by sacrificing its life. The ninja nation separated from the battle to recuperate and re-evaluate their losses. In a battle between 75,184, only 9,573 survived. The ninja battle force was greatly reduced, becoming almost extinct. For the next year, chaos had grown over the nations. Until the nation's leaders met again, not for battle, but for peace. They made a pact to work together for the better state of their people. They made teams of 5, one ninja from each village, spread over the areas of the world. Although originally the alliance was shaky, over time, they came to trust each other. Soon enough, the samurai from the land of iron joined in the effort. When the fights were over, they worked toward making their lives better. They used their skills to make new land, increase energy, save people in need. They were no longer shinobi, warriors of the night, but heroes, working together to keep peace sacred. But the losses toward this peace were never forgotten. The ninja who died in the war were remembered every year. The life lost in the effort toward the peace were carved into stone, never to be forgotten. But what no one forgot was the life of the boy who changed the ninja's heart. At the discovery of what he was put through, the ninja worked toward making sure pain like that was never experienced again. The peace they experience every day. The lives that are kept happy and safe. The light that shines down on all that are afraid. It was all thanks to that boy. Naruto Uzumaki. The child who helped change the world. In the desert, a row of caravans traveled toward the beach. In the back of the carts, men, women, and children all tied up. Two men complained of the heat. It's too much to ride in this unbearable heat. Why did we have to do this? The man asked as the sounds of people crying were heard behind him. Because we had to bring as many people we could find back to the tower. That is what the master told us to do. They continued in silence until he saw something in the heat. What is that? The front cart stopped, the men jumped off and walked to what they had seen. When they arrived at it, they were surprised. On the ground was a small, blond boy with scars on his cheeks. He appeared injured, but no visible wounds could be seen. From the way he was sleeping, it appeared like he was unconscious. One of the men placed his fingers on his neck, feeling a faint pulse. He's alive, but I don't know if he will wake up. What should we do? He asked his partner. The man had an evil smirk. What else? We put him with the rest. They both smiled as they grabbed the boy roughly and threw him in the cart, closing the bars. They continued the trek towards the beach, arriving at the boats. When they did, they moved all the captured into the brig, even the unconscious child. And then, they sailed off to their destination. To the skyscraper on the sea. The Tower of Heaven. Hamonji-san, don't stop. A little girl no older than 5 with red hair asked the old man. Please tell me more stories. You promised. She said with an adorable pout that put puppies to shame. The tall, wrinkled old man with white hair laughed. Okay. Give me a sec. Oh. The man snapped his fingers. Have I told you the one about the handsome hero who saved the princess from trolls with the help of his midget friend Dryer? Yeah. And the one about the girl from another world. And the one about the hero and his friend Bobby going to party with the princesses. And all of them with that mad midget man Dryer. She tilted her head in wonder. Why is he so angry anyway? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that one out. He scratched his chin. He snapped his fingers and had a smile. Oh, I like this one. I'm going to tell you the story of when the fairies helped and saved the visitors from a different dimension. Are you ready? The little girl jumped up and down in excitement before the bars opened up, revealing the jailers. The girl grabbed the leg of the tall elder. Rob Jai-san, why are they here? To bring in the next group. Don't be afraid. As he finished his sentence, a body hit the ground. A little boy with whisker marks that wasn't awake. Little bastard slept through the whole travel. Wonder if he is dead. The jailer shrugged before he shut the door. The other slaves paid no attention, but Rob walked up to the young boy and picked him up. He brought him over to the girl and examined him. After several minutes, he couldn't find any injuries, but the boy still wouldn't wake up. He was planning to use magic when the little girl asked him. Is he alright, Jai-san? I don't know. There are no injuries, no pain, but he won't wake up. Like he doesn't want to. Well, I know how to. The little girl said with a smile. She leaned over and placed her forehead on the boy's. The old man only sweat dropped at what the girl was doing. Honey, what are you doing? I'm letting him know someone is here. Maybe he is lost and just needs to find a way back. Where am I? What is this? Hey Kurama, where are you? No answer. Kurama. Hello, anyone? No answer. Please. I'm cold. So cold. Please. He then saw a light in the darkness. He tried to walk toward the warmth but struggled to move. After many tries, he finally moved forward. He reached toward the light and was engulfed in it. Naruto slowly opened his eyes. The light burning him as he opened too fast. But blocking out the light was something. Something red. It was hair. Red hair. The person who owned said hair opened their eyes and saw something look back. Strong brown eyes looked into clear blue ones. They lifted their head and looked at the boy on their lap. Hello. They said in a high-pitched voice. Hi. Naruto replied softly, still adjusting to where he was. Where am I? The girl gained a sad look. You're in the tower, I'm sorry. She then had a soft smile. But you're with friends here. What's your name? I'm Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki. Hi Naruto. I'm Urza. Naruto had a confused look on his face as he peeked around to find something he could recognize. He felt uncomfortable in this Urza's lap, so he tried to lift himself up, but when he did he cringed and fell on his side from a lack of energy. Ah. Are you okay? Urza asked with a worried tone when she saw him fall. He didn't answer her and tried multiple times to pull himself up to his knees but failed. He finally found some stability on his knees before he grabbed his head in pain. He moaned, where am I? I told you already, you're in the tower. Urza responded while she tried to get him to face her. Well, what is that? He said sharply, I don't know what you mean about a tower. It's the place said to deliver this world to sanctuary. The Tower of Heaven. The children looked to the elderly man sitting to the side. He was a tall man with white hair, sitting in a crossed position as he looked at the boy with a questioning gaze. Naruto looked back at the old man in doubt as he didn't recognize who he was. So far he had only met one elderly person in his whole life, and Dan's did not make a good impression for the bunch. "And who are you supposed to be, Gramps?" Naruto said with a hint of distaste aimed at the slave. Rob looked into the eyes of the boy, seeing anger and fear someone his age should never have to feel. And their stares lasted for several moments. Until Naruto got pushed fur. Naruto fell to his side, looking towards the girl who pushed him. She had an upset look on her face and aimed a glare at the blonde. "Don't be mean to Rob Jason. He's really nice." She pointed at the boy. "Apologize." "And no." Naruto said as he finally got to his feet while glaring at the girl. "He was looking at me funny and didn't say anything." Apologize." Urza said as she started to beat her hands against the slightly taller boy. The boy started to back away from the surprisingly heavy hits of the small girl. He then ran away in circles as the girl chased him, yelling at him to apologize. Rob looked in amazement at the scene and then had a small laugh at their antics. The boy finally succumbed to the girl's wishes, sitting in front of the elder. He looked straight at the man and then changed his gaze to the side. The boy struggled with the right words. "I'm sorry Jai-san," he said and then turned to look at the red-haired girl for approval. She had her arms crossed, nodding her head with a smile. Rob looked at the young lad and then gained a soft look on his face. "I'm sorry if I offended you, young man. I was just interested in who you are," he said as he tried to touch the young man's shoulder but saw the boy flinch. "What's wrong?" The boy gained a slightly frightened look, not trusting the man in front of him. "I'm sorry. It's just that I don't usually have people apologize to me. And when they touch me, they usually just hit me," he said to the old man, who had just gained an extremely dark face. "They did what? Why did they hit you?" Rob said as he could feel anger quickly grow inside him. Even though Rob did not know this young man, he could not comprehend the idea that a child should be beaten at such a young age. "I don't know," Naruto said as he looked up at the old man. "Since as long as I could remember, people just hated me. I don't know why, but they looked at me like I was something else. Something bad." The blonde shook as he recalled everything that happened to him. Rob looked at the boy in shock. He wished he could find these men and give them a piece of his mind. Whatever he did, no child deserved to be hurt by people. Is that what led him here? He wondered as he tried to think this through. Should he ask? "Why are you here?" Urza broke the tension between the two with a questioning look. She felt very uncomfortable from the sidelines. Naruto looked to the little girl sitting beside him and the old man. He tried to think, closing his eyes. "I can't remember." He strained himself trying to remember the last thing in his mind. He remembered the men with masks all gathering around him. He could hear Kakashi screaming in the background, asking that the boy could be spared. Then Dan's walked in front of him and he blacked out. Naruto couldn't remember anything after that. Just then he decided to talk to Kurama, maybe he had the answer to what was happening. He opened his eyes and found himself in the same sewer he had come to know. He walked up to the cell, prepared to talk with the ancient fox, but found something off. In place of the titanic demon was a massive ball of red chakra. Naruto walked toward the ball and reached his hand out. Immediately the ball changed shape, becoming the form of the fox he knew, but without a face. The faceless body stomped forward, almost crushing the boy, and lurched forward. The boy hesitated, but reached his hand forward and touched the body of the chakra. Instantly, memories flooded into his head, taking over for several moments. Images of bodies piling up, massive monsters attacking each other, and a spiraled man reaching for him. And then he saw Kurama, standing with his body fading away. He could see that he was talking, but he could not hear what he was saying. And then, after some time, he just vanished. Naruto then finally understood why Kurama looked like this. Why he didn't talk or react how he usually did. This was just a memory. An echo of himself. The body he left behind. Kurama was gone. Naruto opened his eyes. He just let it wash over him. The strongest thing he had ever met in his whole life was gone. He could feel an overwhelming sadness take him over. But no matter how hard he tried, the tears just wouldn't come. Rob and Urza looked at the new boy. They wanted to ask him what was wrong, but they could tell that it was something bad. Urza reached out to help him, but felt a rough hand place itself on her shoulder. She turned her head to see Rob with a sorrowful look on his face, shaking his head in the negative. Rob moved forward and sat in front of the depressed boy. He placed his hands on the boy's shoulders to gain his attention. The boy looked up at the man that had brought him back. He had a regretful smile, one that showed understanding and pity for the little boy. "I know you probably don't want to tell us, but you should know we will help. This place is hell. But we will be here with you, so just rest for now." The boy nodded his head in understanding. He laid down on the floor and curled himself into a ball, already used to these circumstances. The man looked at the boy I worry, but decided to leave him be. He turned back around and walked toward the little girl. He smiled at her and patted her head. "Come on Urza-chan, it's time for bed." You will need the energy for the work tomorrow. She looked downcast for a moment but looked back up at the elder and smiled. She laid on the floor and closed her eyes. She was terrified of the idea of the work tomorrow. But she silently hoped that the boy would feel better the next day. Images of war passed in his consciousness. Blood pooling in the craters and trenches created from devastating attacks. Ninja of all sizes and age attacking, decimating each other. And at the center of it all were 8 figures. They started out as small, black multi-tailed monsters charging at one another. And then, some of them grew to gigantic size, becoming monsters that destroyed whole sections of the battlefield. And at the very center, the giant blast that knocked them out. And then, from the bleary vision he still had, he could see figures still attacking and defending. Then from the air came Kurama, standing above him, his hands popped out of his chest. Once again, he slowly faded from his vision, disappearing forever. Naruto jerked awake at the sound of a loud scream. He felt a cold sweat drop from his neck at the continued images played in his head all night. He turned his head in the direction of the scream. From different cells, people were being led by men dressed in strange clothes, holding staffs. Sometimes, lightning would shoot out from the staff, shocking the prisoners. This led to the people moving faster, in hopes that they wouldn't be hurt next. He stood up when his cell was opened. A robed man with a face mask walked forward and stood in front of him. The man looked around and saw the new boy stand in front of him with the other 2 at the side. The little girl was hiding behind the tall old man. He brought his attention back at the little boy. He smirked at the new chance to enforce himself. "Hello, young man. Welcome to our humble home. You slept for a while so you probably don't know the rules. So let me educate you." He brought his head up and punched the boy into the ground, grunting at the force. The little girl had let out a quiet scream at his action. "Head up, you little shit. Time to work." He grabbed his staff and unleashed a wave of thunder on the small child. The boy shook in pain at the sudden attack. The attack ended and the boy tried to lift himself up but was kicked forward to join the crowd. He moved along with the tall slaves and came into an open cave. He saw people gathering crates and rocks together, placing them on floating platforms and bringing them to designated areas. He saw the masked men whipping people who moved slowly with a strange glowing whip. He was bewildered at the horrors in front of him. People being tortured and attacked in front of each other. Others not making any effort to help one another. Just working in fear, hoping that they would be ignored. As Naruto stood there, he was thinking of making the first run for it he could. But then he was pushed by one of the jailers toward a working path. He was pushing back until another electric shock coursed through his body, making him scream. He looked up at the rocks and rubble breaking in front of him. He followed the examples that the other men and children were making. He reached out and grabbed the first stone he found and threw it in a growing pile. He continued to grab the dense rocks and throw them. Listening to the screams and pains that played around him. He felt his hands rip and cut at the feeling of the rough stone. After hours of work, a loud bell pierced the cave. When Naruto looked around, he saw that the rest of the slaves were leaving. He decided to follow the crowd in the halls and into the cells. After a few minutes he finally arrived at the cell he arrived in. He slowly entered the cell and saw that the old man and little kid were back. The old man had scruff marks and dirt all over him. It showed that he had done work similar to him and had been shocked as well. In front of him was that girl Urza. She was sniffling and had her hands out in front of her. They were covered in cuts and bruises just like his. The old man Rob was holding her hands and his were shining a strange light. He saw that Urza's hands were healing and gaining color back. After a few moments, they were fixed and she wasn't crying anymore. She beamed at the elder and hugged him around his neck. The old man returning the gesture to the young child. He released the girl and she went into the corner to play. After a few seconds, Rob turned his head and saw that the new child was standing close to the bars, looking at them. He looked down and the boy's hands resting at his side, covered in cuts and blood. He turned and addressed the young boy. "I see that you worked hard today," he said with a sad look in his eyes. "Come here, I'll fix them for you." The boy looked at the man in questioning until he felt his hands twitch. He decided to follow the example that he saw and sat in front of the man. He placed his hands out and the old man took them in his, the strange light covering his hands. "Now I ain't the best at healing, but I'm good enough to fix a few scratches," he said with a slight smile at the little boy. The boy only looked at the man but didn't react to his little joke. Rob's eyes softened and continued to work on the cuts. "I'm sorry you had to go through that on your first day. What the hell is this place?" Naruto looked up at the man with a worried look. "How can they do something like this? They are corrupt and evil men. Using people to get what they want." I think everyone is like that," the boy let out a quick dry chuckle. The man saw that the light was not doing anything to help the boy. He released the kid's hands and saw that barely any of the scratches were gone. He looked at the little boy with a bewildered look. "It doesn't seem to be helping you. I don't understand this." The boy raised his hands to see that the scratches were barely fading even now. The rate at how they disappeared before he arrived was not even a feasible dream. My wounds always healed fast. But now, the chakra can't do anything close to what it did before. Rob looked at the young man with a surprised look etched on his face. His eyes opened in shock at what the boy just said. Memories of past adventures rising back into his mind. What did you just say? The boy looked up at the wrinkled man and tilted his head. I said Kurama's chakra isn't helping. It always used to help when I came back from those missions, but it isn't working. He clenched his hands into beaten fists. I can't fix myself like this. Not without him. The elder looked at the little boy who had disappointment in his eyes. Who is Kurama? He questioned the child. He used to live here, he motioned to his belly, but he is gone now. The boy had a far-off look in his eyes. Rob decided to rip his shirt and wrap the boy's hands in it. I'm sorry but I can't help your hands. But it will heal in time. I promise. Why not Jai-san? You healed me didn't you? Urza said as she approached the two boys. She had wondered what the two were talking about while she was sitting away. Because I've seen this before. I can't help him because he is not from here. Both of their eyes widened in shock at what he had just said. Rob could see that both of them had not understood what he had said, so he had decided to elaborate. I've met people like you who used something called chakra. They were very strong and could fight many people, but when they would fight, we couldn't heal them. He moved back and traced his finger along the dirt and drew something. When he lifted his hand there was an image of a spiral with a point on its edge. Do you know what this symbol is? Naruto looked at the image and it instantly clicked. Yeah, the men with masks always had this symbol on their heads. They said it was a leaf. Why? Yeah, you're from the same place. Rob said with a regretful smile. You use something called chakra, which is similar to magic but uses different elements to make it. And because of that, I can't use my magic to heal you. What? Why? Nah, Jai-san, I don't understand. You told me that everyone has magic right. So why doesn't he? Urza asked Rob with a curious tone. Yes Urza-chan, everyone here is capable of magic if they tried. But Naruto-kun here doesn't have the ability to summon it. Since he comes from a place where people use something other than magic. He is incapable of gathering Eternano which we need to use magic. And without an origin, he can't use magic to gather in his body and heal him. He looked up to see that both children had a big questioning look on their faces. He then remembered that he was talking kids and should try to simplify the explanation. I can't do anything to heal him with my magic. He has to heal without our help. Naruto stood to his feet to address the elder man, but what about Kurama's chakra? Why can't it heal me? I think that without Kurama's help, that chakra doesn't know what to do. It is just a massive power that can't do anything without something leading it. And without help, it can't heal you the same way as before. Naruto looked down in despair, feeling that his best advantage had disappeared. He then felt two palms on his back and turned his head and saw Urza beam at him. It's alright. Everything will work out. Naruto only looked at her with empty eyes and settled into the floor, ignoring her encouragement. She pouted and prepared to nudge him but was stopped by Rob. He shook his head and motioned for her to go to bed. She was angry at first, but then she reluctantly followed his directions. Rob looked toward the sleeping boy and wished to talk to him. But knew that he should leave him alone. He placed himself against the rock wall and dozed off. Ignoring the sounds around him, he went off to his memories and dreams. The massive man stood in the clearing along with his friends, preparing to see off the travelers. All of them were chatting with those they have come to know. Rob looked to his side to see Goldmine talk to some of the Anbu. Talking about how they should start taking it easier and be wild. Bob was flirting with the females and giving them the look. He sure did enjoy talking to the ladies, although he would also flirt with the men and give them a more, well, lustful gaze. To the side he saw Yujima and Pruyusuka talking with the scientists and Yukiha-san. He was asking what kind of techniques and skills that was custom over on their side. Yukiha-san was giving him a long explanation of what was possible over there. And after some time they began to talk about the ideas of food and cooking. She told him that if they found a way to go back, she would feed her two kids the recipes he gave her. Finally he looked to his side and saw Makarov beside him looking around the clearing with pride. He was so happy that their group had come to connect with the traveling ninja. He still wanted to try and hit on Yukiha-san, but after the first time he decided not to get on her angry side. Even Makarov had learned to stay away when he was punched through several trees and bounced off the water into a big splash. Man, that was a fun time fishing him out of the big lake. But now they had to head back home. Master Purahito was sending messages that they had to come back home. And the Konoha travelers had to get moving again. Or else the guards were going to come back and attack again. So, are you sure that you have everything you need? We can still give you some rations and water. I mean you can even follow us to Fairy Tale if you like. Makarov said to the tall figure standing beside the two of them. No, I will not impose on your help and hospitality. He said with a smile at the two of them. If we followed you to your home, they may come there and close you down. Besides, until we find a suitable place to go back, I wish to look around this wonderful land, see this world for what is possible. Rob and Makarov looked to each other and smiled. Then they tied their arms around his neck and gave him a smile. Well, Hashirama-san, it has been fun running from the Royal Guard with you. But if that captain finds us, we will be screwed. We wish you luck on your journey and on your way home. Thank you, Makarov-san, Rob-san. We will never forget the kindness you have shown us these past few days. We will never forget Fairy Tail. Okay, well, if you need our help, just visit. Makarov said as he detached himself from Hashirama and joined the rest of the Fairy Tail on one side. They waved the vanguard group away and hoped that they had fortune in their travels. Over time they had heard stories in the papers of mysterious people helping civilians in trouble. A strange group of justice that arrived for people in dire need of help. But their group knew instantly that the group was their ninja friends. Listening about how that section of the Royal Guard was traveling across Fiori in search of the group with a strange energy. They knew that their friends would never be captured and questioned. And that they could just keep running. Until 1 year after they saw the group off, they heard the horrible news. It became known as one of the worst military catastrophes in history. The Ruse Guard had been chasing the group for several months and had decided that capture was no longer an option. Now, it was a kill on sight. From the news, it was said that the captain had blasted a massive magic attack to kill the insurgents. Most likely it was Abyss Breaker the Jupiter. It seemed to work until the attack continued forward. The attack landed and devastated the small village of Taniwa. The death toll reached over 400 and the village was wiped off the map. A small group of guards and the captain were regarded as criminals, with the leader marked as an S-class criminal. They were wanted and feared by most people in Fiori. But that is what you would expect from the former squadron chief of the Holy Knights. The whole group was dumbstruck at this news. They never heard of the ninja group again after that. It was believed that they had been wiped out. After that, they decided to help the country the best they could in memory of their friends. Sometime after Maki got promoted to the guild master, the group separated and traveled to help the world. Goldmine and Bob decided to make guilds of their own to help the country. Yujima joined the Magic Council to make sure that the tragedy that happened at Taniwa never occurred again. Which he had successfully done for many years. Makarov and Perusica stayed in Magnolia. She decided that the idiot could use some help with keeping the guild standing. And Rob decided that he could travel and see Fiori. Having houses close to major cities and places of interest. And during his travels, he never forgot what happened to his friends. Rob awoke to the jailers yelling. He saw that they were screaming at Naruto, who was standing in front of a tearful Urza. He could tell that the jailer had decided to once again assert his power in front of the slaves and the little red-haired girl had caught his eye. Naruto put himself between the sick bastard and Urza, smacking him in the balls when he was about to hit her. He grabbed the staff and held it at the man. The jailer had a furious look plastered on his face. You think you can do anything, you fucker? You think you can kill me? You think I can't kill you? I've already killed enough to make you cringe, you fuck. Naruto said with a wicked growl in his voice and anger in his eyes. Rob's eyes widened in shock. He is killed. My god, what has he been through? Naruto raised a weapon and was about to hit the cult member. But just as he was about to strike, visions of blood poured into his head. He stopped and froze, a cold feeling spreading down his body. The texture of blood stained on his hand. Pushing his hands and feet through the bodies of his enemies. Standing over the piles of bodies that came in his way. The jailer looked up at the frozen boy and smirked. In that moment he struck the boy and took his staff back. He aimed it back at him and shot lightning at the little boy's chest. The child jerked at the feeling of a million needles piercing his frame. After a minute, he stopped the discharge and lowered the weapon. He silently turned around and closed the bars. He then smirked darkly and chuckled at the boy's feeble attempt to fight back. Urza moved forward and nudged Naruto, hoping that he would respond. After several tries, he finally started moving and propped himself on his elbows. He took a deep breath and tried to think about what had happened. Why? Why couldn't I go through? Why? Because you can't stand doing it anymore. Urza and Naruto looked toward Rob, who was sitting close to them after the moment passed. I don't think you are capable of killing anymore because you regret it. People who have done bad things try their best to make up for them. And you didn't follow through because you can't stand taking any more lives. He said to the horrified boy. Naruto gained a growing feeling of dread. He looked toward the ground and started pounding his fist against the floor. Why damn it. Rob and Urza flinched at his exclamation. He said that was all I had. All I was good for was killing. I wanted to leave because I thought that I had something more. Kakashi told me that I could be more, but is this it? He looked up at Rob with pleading eyes. Is this what the outside world is like? My freedom is gone. My friend is gone. My purpose is gone. He clenched as hard as he could until his hand started to bleed. What do I do? He asked no one in particular. He just wallowed there in his pain, not knowing what he could do. Rob looked at the child in pity. When someone was put into such situations at this age, there was not much that could be done to help them. Words of wisdom only seemed to infuriate them, and ideas about what they could do only made it worse. There was nothing he could do, but then a little red angel came and opened the way. You could join a guild. Urza said with a cheerful smile, trying to lighten the mood. Naruto lifted his head at her, not understanding what she just said. What? A guild? A family? That is what Jai-san keeps telling me about. How people with nowhere to go can come together and have fun and adventures. That anyone alone can join and be a part of something bigger. She said with a beautiful smile gracing her face, looking down at the boy that now had a look of bewilderment stuck on his face. But I can't explain because I haven't seen one, but Jai-san has. She grabbed his hand and pulled him toward Rob. Jai-san, tell him about all those guilds and things you told me. Please. She looked up at him, with Naruto beside her with a look of wonder, his previous pain was gone. Rob looked between the two of them, surprised that all that had happened was forgotten, and now he was the center of attention. He grew a smile and got settled. Alright, so get ready you two. I'm about to tell you the wonderful stories of guilds around the world. Rob continued to tell his stories and adventures in Fairy Tail, putting extra detail into making his character awesome. Stories of treasure hunting, saving people and stopping bandits. Urza was elated, continuing to hear the stories for another time. But where Naruto started off with a skeptical look, he then started to listen intently. His eyes growing bigger and bigger with every story. He and Urza started laughing when Dryer was caught in a mini tornado. Urza happily squealed and Naruto gagged when Bobby and Yagi got familiar with the thankful girls. And they cheered when their team won against the evil guilds. After hours passed, both Naruto and Urza were both happy after the story time. Naruto no longer depressed with the events that played out, now only interested in the guilds. He looked toward Urza and smiled. Thank you. She stopped laughing and looked at him funny, what for? I was really sad before, but that changed when you got me here. Naruto smiled at her. Urza was shocked but then formed a smile, you're welcome. You're a cool guy, you know that Urza. Both Rob and Urza stopped moving and looked at the new boy. Urza twitched at the assumption. Hey, I'm a girl. What? A girl you idiot, don't you know what a girl is? Naruto shook his head. Rob touched Naruto's shoulder and whispered in his ear, Naruto-kun, girls are different than us. They are nice and sweet and they don't have that important thing. Rob said with a slight nervous tone at explaining the difference between boys and girls to a 6-year-old. Naruto looked at Rob in questioning at the last thing he said, causing the former mage to let out a deep sigh. That thing between our legs. Naruto tilted his head and walked toward Urza. He stood in front of her and then lifted the hem of her clothes. Rob blanked at the boy's forward behavior and Urza screamed before she planted her fist in his cheek. Naruto slid back with a red cheek while Urza had a growing blush painted on her face. She marched up to Rob and pointed at Naruto with a heated glare, I don't want him here anymore. He is a pervert. Yeah, now Urza-chan, I don't think he meant that. Rob motioned his hands for the girl to calm down. No, make him apologize. She started to shake her arms in circles at the elder man, hoping that he would make the boy say sorry. What did I do? You looked up my skirt, pervert. What's a pervert? You're a pervert. Stop calling me that. Old man, stop her. He turned to the old man to see that he was faking sleeping. Now only leaving him and the angry girl in the cell. He turned back around to see the girl had turned head with puffed cheeks. He grumbled and scratched his head, thinking that all of this was becoming too much for one day. Sorry, okay. Urza glared at him, you suck. How could you do that? You're such a meanie. He pointed at her, what did I do exactly? You just got angry at me for no reason. You looked at my mic, you pervert. She started to once again beat her hands against him, Naruto trying to protect himself from her heavy hits. She was crazy strong for a little girl. Didn't your parents teach you any manners? Naruto looked at her through her fists. I don't have parents. What about you, who taught you that you should hit people for no reason? She stopped her furious fists and looked at him. I don't know what happened to my parents. She lowered her hands and looked at her palms, forgetting her anger toward the whiskered boy. I remember that before I came here, people used to look after me. A man and woman who loved me very much, but I can't remember their faces. Naruto looked at the girl and grew worried. She had become sad very quickly and had her eyes covered by her scarlet hair. One of the reasons I want to join a guild is so that I can find out what happened to my parents. She said as she lifted her head to show tearful eyes. But I don't know if I can leave this place. Yes you can. Urza lifted her head to see Naruto with a grin on his face and a clenched fist. You can leave this place and find your family easily. You're strong, your fists hurt like hell. Where will you go when you leave this place? Urza lowered her head shyly, I was thinking of joining Fairy Tail. Rob Jai-san made it seem like so much fun. Then that is where you will go, I'm sure of it. He said as he stood up proudly and pointed to the fake horizon. You will join Fairy Tail, find your family, and be the best. He turned back around and gave her a cheerful smile, which made her happy and nervous at the same time. "Why you can come with me," she said as she avoided his curious stare at her statement. "I mean you owe me so, you can come to Fairy Tale and we can have an adventure just like Rob Jai-san. I thought you didn't like me. Well you can make up for it alright," she said as she moved her open hand in front of her. "Deal?" He looked down at her hand, back up at her, and smiled. He grasped her hand and shook, "Yeah. But the problem is you can't use magic, so I'd think that I'll have to be the brain and brains of our team." "What?" "Please, I can fight off like a million gazillion bad guys while you cry in a corner." "Oh yeah, well I'll frighten of every monster in the world and fly in the sky and destroy whole countries with my attacks." "Yeah, well I'll blow up the whole the world with a fart." "You, shut up. No, I'll be stronger than you, I promise." Naruto and Urza continued to argue all night about who could do what and how they'll beat one another. And at the side Rob smiled, happy to see that the little boy and girl were finally happy. Even if it was by arguing with each other. Another ship arrived at the dock of the tower. The cult jailers leading the new arrival of slaves into the base of the structure. Inside one of the cells were Naruto, Urza, and Rob sitting around each other as Naruto carved into the dirt. "See, this is what I know how to write." The other two looked down to see kanji crudely written in the gravel. Rob had decided to teach Naruto about how to write the language since he apparently didn't know how to. The character was familiar to Rob, knowing that this writing was used in Fiori, but far less than the letters they usually used. And on a side note, he had very bad handwriting. "You have very bad handwriting." At Urza, always ready to deal the truth. Shut up okay. He argued with a little girl with a pink hue on his face, "I wasn't taught very well." "It's alright Naruto-kun, I'll help you through this." Rob then started to give Naruto a crash course in the local writing until the sound of the jailers leading in the new meat arrived. All the slaves cowered in the corner of their respective cells, with the three of them feeling nervous as more people passed by. The jailer walked up to their cell and unlocked the bars, pushing them open and throwing a new child. The moment he landed he sprung back up and pounded his fists against the bars, screaming. Several minutes passed with the boy still throwing out profanity left and right. Naruto walked up to the boy and stopped him. The boy immediately reacted and smacked his hand away and continued to pound against the bars. "Don't touch me." "Who are you?" "We are slaves here too alright, so calm down." The boy had paid no attention to Naruto. After several more moments, Naruto got ticked off and grabbed the boy and threw him away from the bars. "Stop it, that is stupid." "Why should I?" "I want out of here." The boy yelled at Naruto. "We all want out, but breaking your hands isn't going to help us get out." The boy looked down at his bruised hands, injured from hitting the bars. "Have you calmed down now?" The boy reluctantly nodded his head. "Alright kid, well I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Who the hell are you supposed to be?" The boy lifted his head, showing his eyes through his blue hair. His eyes were brown and were glaring at Naruto with contempt. Around his right eye was a strange tattoo. "I'm Gel Fernandez." "Who are you punk?" Naruto gained a tick mark. He knew instantly. This guy was going to be a pain. It slithered across the floor of the working cave. Traveled past the broken slabs of rock and gravel. And avoided the multiple bare feet of the slaves marching past it. It lifted its head and looked about at those moving around it. The child it had come to know had disappeared from its side as it was stalking around, hoping to find a rat or bug to eat. It shot out its lit tongue into the air to get a better positioning at where it was. After a few moments of recognizing its surroundings, the snake had gotten a general direction of where the boy was. But then, it tasted something different in the air from the rest of the slaves around the snake. Something similar to the boy that took care of it, yet different as well. It turned its body toward a slave boy throwing rocks. It slithered its way to the strange child, its scales picking up the dirt on its way. After a few seconds, it arrived at a target lying next to his feet. It positioned itself up and hissed loud enough that it could be heard over the sound of rocks colliding. It saw the boy look up from his work and turn his head to see the area around him. After a few seconds, it appeared that the boy had shrugged off the sound as a figment of his imagination. Just as he was about to get back to work, the snake hissed louder, finally gaining the boy's attention. The boy looked by his feet to see a violet snake looking up at him. After a few moments of exchanging looks the boy reacted how the snake had thought he would. Snake. Go away, go away." The boy had jumped back and shook his open hands to gesture the snake to leave him alone. The snake only tilted its head and continued to gaze at the boy. The boy tried several more methods like throwing pebble, poking it, and making loud noises, but the snake did not retreat. The boy let out a deep and annoyed sigh, hesitantly got down on one knee and stretched out his hand. "Just don't bite me, okay?" The snake slid its way onto the boy's palm and wrapped itself around his hand, feeling the rough scratches and calluses from years of work as it moved. The boy stood back up and brought his palm to his eye level to see the snake better. As he brought up his hand, the snake got a better look at him as well. He had rough blonde hair that spiked in every direction. He had strong blue eyes that felt like it was looking into a deep lake. And on each of his cheeks were 3 whiskers, giving the appearance of scars. The boy studied the snake intently for several moments. Looking at the reptilian from each angle his hand could make, the snake constantly looking at him as he did. He made some space between him and the snake in his hand and grinned. "Well, aren't you pretty? It is kind of weird to see a snake here though, rare to see an animal in general." He raised an eyebrow and gave a questioning look. "You aren't starved so you have been fed. Who has been feeding you little goo?" The boy was continuing his questioning of the silent animal until he was comically kicked in the face. The snake was thrown in the air as the strange boy skidded on the floor, a bump on his head. The reptilian had no change in expression or movement as it flew up in the air, rotating around an axis. As it fell back to Earthland, it landed in another, more familiar pair of hands. It immediately got comfortable and started tightening itself safely around his hand. It was brought up to his face where it proceeded to nuzzle into his cheek. The boy nuzzled back content until his eyes shot back up in anger. "Hey, I don't want to see you touch her ever again, you hear me?" The maroon-haired boy yelled with an accusing finger at the blonde kid he had just introduced to the concrete. Said kid lifted himself up and glared daggers at the slanted-eyed child that had kicked him. "Hey, why the hell did you kick me, you asshole? If you wanted the snake then you can have it," he said with a huff before he dodged a rock aimed at his face. He balanced himself to see the snake boy with his hand outstretched after throwing the stone. "What the hell was that for? Don't call her an it, you freak. Her name is Kuberos and she is my closest friend." He looked down at his hand to see the snake looking up at him with something akin to happiness. He smiled at the snake. The blonde kid looked at the strange boy with a deadpan stare. "So your friend is a snake, well I hope you two are happy together," he said as he clapped his hands in mock support. The slanted-eyed kid pointed at the whiskered boy. "Hey, we aren't like that, you douche." He then turned his head and scratched the purple snake's underside. "Besides, if she was in your hands any longer she might catch a disease by a cat cosplayer," he said with a wry grin hidden by his position. The blonde boy grew furious and steam rang from his ears. He marched toward the snake boy and pointed at him. "Hey. I am not a kitty cosplayer. Just because Milichan likes to call me Nico Man sometimes doesn't mean anything. I just do that to cheer her up. The FFT, whatever Catman." He continued to pet the snake. "And damn it, my name is not Catman, it is Naruto Uzumaki. Alright," he yelled as he jabbed his thumb at himself to emphasize his point. "We can't all be like you, Snake Boy," he said as he let out a condescending chuckle. Getting the snake boy to stand up and smash his forehead with Naruto. "It's not. My name is Eric," he said as he tried to win in this game of push between him and the blonde boy, sparks flying between their eyes. "You're just a snake man to me, little boy." Naruto had momentarily forced Eric back, a smug smirk on his face as he was winning. Until Eric started pushing back, eyes furious. "It's not little boy, baby bitch. I'm probably older than you, punk." "No way, I turned 12 a few weeks ago. I'm so older." He thought he had won until he saw Eric grow a bigger smirk. "Oh ho, so I do win. I'm 12 and a half. So you must refer to me as Eric-sama senpai." The boys continued their push until they both retracted. They both rubbed their red foreheads to ease the pain. After Naruto had cooled down his head he turned to the crimson-haired boy. "See, you must be younger, only little kids use the excuse of months to win an argument of age. Hey, just because you are a little kid doesn't mean we all have shriveled sacks like you. So refer to me in respect, brat." Eric smirked at the boy that had insulted his snake friend by touching her. "Sure. Respect. So what should I call you?" he said with a sarcastic tone layered over his voice. "Snake Eyes. Slithers. Maybe I should just call you King Cobra," he said as a tick mark grew on his head at the annoyance the slightly older boy was causing him. "That's right." Eric snapped his fingers and pointed a finger in a superior manner. "I'm the Cobra, bitch. The best and deadliest of snakes. So watch yourself or I'll poison you dead," punk, he growled as he raised his hands and separated his fingers to mock snake fangs. "Try it and I'll pull your fangs out, asshole." Naruto lifted his middle finger and growled back. The boys continued this stare-off until they heard the bell, both turned around and walked off. Naruto turned his head and addressed the new boy he met. "Watch yourself, man. Don't think I'll lose to anyone like you, got it?" Eric smirked at the accusation of a challenge by the whiskered kid. "Please, if you touch Kuberos again, I'll kick your ass from halfway around Earthland and back." Eric continued his march back to his cell where his groups of misfit friends were at. When he arrived he saw the silent boy laying on the floor and the girl looking through the bars. At the corner, the long-nosed boy was kicking the dirt around. And finally, in the middle of the cell was the heavy-set boy throwing rocks around. As he sat in front of him the fat orange-haired boy acknowledged his arrival. "Eric-san, you are back." The boy seemed honestly happy that he came back. He looked at him with expectance. "Any news?" He bounced in place. The snake boy continued to look at the snake. "Sorry, Richard. No dice. He looked back up at the large boy, seeing that the kid had grown a depressed visage. I promise I'll tell you if I can find your brother Wally. But until then, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a fresh spud he stole from the kitchen and tossed it to the boy. Enjoy. Richard gained a happier expression after receiving the potato. Even if he couldn't find his brother, a potato always got him out of his funk. He peeled the starch and took a bite. He looked back up and saw that the reptilian lover had a thought in his head as he took care of the snake. Is something wrong, Eric-san? He asked the boy as he chewed on the raw food, some skin getting stuck in his teeth. The slanted-eyed boy was brought out of his funk from the sudden question. Oh, it is nothing, Richard. He looked back down and pet the snake as she nuzzled his palm. I just met some really annoying asshole, he said with a smirk. Naruto rubbed the back of his head and yawned from fatigue. This was getting tiring, working like this every day. He had grown a lot stronger and bigger since he was a 6-year-old all that time ago. Although from what Rob Jichin, he was still pretty short for someone his age. But he had to keep up his appearance around his friends as a strong kid. Speaking of which, he had just separated off from the large group of slaves walking back. He moved past the bars and saw all of his friends playing in the center, with Rob Jichin at the side watching them. Naruto grew a confident grin and strolled toward his friends. Hey guys. He said with a wave of his hand. All 6 of them raised their heads and looked to the new arrival. They saw it was him and smiled. The older members of the group waved to him as the little boy and girl ran up to him, the girl hugging his chest. Chan, where were you? Chan and everyone were worried when you didn't make it back in time. The little girl with a kitten pout and brown hair looked up at the older boy. He grew a cheeky grin and a throaty chuckle. Ha ha, Mila-chan, why would you worry? I was just caught up by this big snake that wanted to stop and eat me. He looked back down to see the little boy and girl look at him in worry. But I totally kicked its butt and skinned it alive because I will always be victorious. He said as he raised his fist in the air. Yeah. The boy and girl cheered at their older brother figure's tale. The dark-skinned boy with brightly combed yellow hair looked up at Naruto. Hey Nai-san, are you sure you are okay? That sounds really scary. The 8-year-old shook on his knees until Naruto rested his hand atop the boy's head. Come on SHM, have a little faith in your older bro, K. He said with a grin as the little boy wiped his tear and smiled up at the boy. He had to tell tall tales to calm down the little boy and girl when they were frantic. Naruto would get scared when he was approached by jailers and such, but he made a big facade in the eyes of the kids to raise their hopes. Anything he could do to make this hellish experience easier for them. Naruto led the 2 of them back to the group that was eyeing him with a questioning gaze. He smirked and shrugged his shoulders, not arguing that he may have been making an idiot of himself through the stories he told. They all chuckled and looked back at the center where they were writing something in the dirt. What are you guys doing? Wally lifted his head full of black hair and chuckled, we're playing tic-tac-toe. Simon and I got our butts handed to us by these 2 here. He and the kid with a mop of black hair both mildly glared at the blue and red-haired kids laughing to themselves. After the little fit they had, the 2 of them readjusted and went back to staring intently at the floor. Wally looked to Naruto as he sat beside him. Who do you think will win this? Naruto shrugged and scratched his scalp and turned to Simon. I have no idea. What about you Simon, any ideas? Simon looked between the 2 and then back at him. Under usual circumstances I think Jello would win, him having more experience in games like chess. But Urza has a blazing determination to win this little tournament and we know she doesn't give up. He made an inquiring look at Naruto who nodded sagely at the assumption. Or it could be that she picked the X and they always win. Jello turned to the peanut gallery and yelled, alright, we get it. Shut up already I'm thinking. He looked back at the dirt and went over his options to win. He thought through each possible move and strategy he could make. Then it hit him that she boxed him in with X while he was distracted by the idiots talking. His face blanked and he lowered his gaze in defeat as the slave girl made the last X and came out victorious. I win. She yelled as she raised her hands in victory, jumping up and down in place. The others joined her in her celebration as Naruto kneeled down and patted Jello's back. It's alright buddy, I lost to her so many times I can't even count anymore. He tried to cheer him up only leading to the blue boy to give him a long stare. Naruto. You lose to everyone when it comes to strategy games. You are the dumbest here. Naruto pouted at the accusation from his blue friend, even if it was true. He decided to leave the boy to mope in annual grief and walk next to his oldest friend. We have a winner. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you, the undefeated champion Urza Scarlet. He raised her hand and every one of their family in the cell clapped, even Jello after abandoning his losing aura. She grew a big smile on her face and bowed. What do I get? What do I get? Urza questioned the rest of the group in a cheerful voice. The group shrugged, not actually thinking of what the prize was for winning. Just as the girl's excitement was about to die down, Rob walked up and picked her up, earning a quick squeal. He placed her on his shoulders and began running around laughing. The winner gets to fly in the air, congratulations. The rest of the group followed in a circle as the old man ran around, the little girl cheering in glee as her grandpa played with her. Naruto followed behind, laughing at Urza's boundless happiness at the moment. Remembering the first time Rob had done that for the both of them. Despite being so old, the man was still strong and spry. After a few more minutes, Rob finally lowered the girl to the ground, where she decided to gather with her friends again. He watched from his corner as all of them started to talk about what had happened today. Jello and Simon telling about the work they did. SHM talking about what he and Nissan had eaten today. And finally, Naruto exaggerating his story of how he interacted with Arikaka the Snake King. Rob couldn't help but chuckle from his spot as the others laughed and gasped as Naruto faked the idea of being eaten by a giant snake and blowing it up from the inside. He had noticed that these kids had done their best to make a bad situation good. Playing games and talking with each other. Listening to some of Rob's old tales about fairy tale. Rob grew a nostalgic look at seeing how much that awkward little boy had grown over the last 6 years. He played with Urza and Jello a lot when they were together as kids. Having little rivalries with them to see who was the best. He sometimes won when it came to strength games and outdoing each other. But he sucked on a whole different level when it came to strategy and thinking games. That was probably the result of not having a very thorough education growing up. Even his makeshift lessons in the cell could only do so much. But that never stopped the boy from doing what he wanted. Whatever he couldn't do correctly, he did in his own way. It was actually very commendable for someone his age to fight through any problems he found. Well, except for his writing ability, that still sucked even now. Rob was brought out of his musings when he saw the whole group cheer as Naruto and Simon laid on their bellies and brought their hands up from their elbows. They interlocked and stared at each other intensively until Milana let go of their hands and they started arm wrestling. A few cheers and whoops were heard from the group as the two continued their mock battle. As it appeared that Simon was gaining the advantage, Naruto was struggling to hold it up. Even though Naruto was older by a few months, Simon had a larger frame than him and could lift the heavier rocks others couldn't. It was amazing how people as young as these kids were so strong. Naruto was holding up his hand only a few degrees away from where they started and smirked. Naruto calmed his mind and controlled his breathing. He felt his power travel through his body and into his hands. He smirked as he eyed Simon, who immediately knew what that evil grin meant. Naruto started to grunt as he overtook Simon in strength. After several moments of futile effort, Naruto smacked Simon's hand into the dirt and stood cheering. Rob chuckled as he saw Naruto use his chakra to win the game. He remembered several years ago that Naruto was trying to utilize the power that his demon friend was teaching him in his cell. After many weeks of trying to bring up the dormant power, Naruto was finally able to call on some of his own strength. Rob supervised Naruto when he tried to do this. To see if he could find any change in Naruto's presence when he did. Rob had concluded that Naruto's power-up was there, but was extremely rough. That with the training and control he has, at most, he could enhance his power by a small factor. When Naruto tested this theory, he nearly broke his hand on the wall, saying he wanted to see if he could destroy it. Rob had let out a very deep sigh at remembering his effort to explain the slight enhancement to the 7-year-old at that time. And what he should use that power for. Ow, 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 ow. Naruto held onto his right hand that had comically swelled and turned deep red from the pain of hitting the wall. Rob was cooling the hand down by taking some of his rationed water and pouring it onto another bandage he made from his shirt. Urza and Jello were sitting next to Naruto as he was treated by his parental figure. I really thought that would work, he said, trying to sound confident like he didn't just make himself look stupid in front of everyone. Yes, well, Rob said as he put his attention to wrapping the boy's hand, don't do it again, okay? You're not strong enough yet. He finished the wrapping and let the boy's hand go. Phew, it was hard to try being medical when you couldn't use your magic to heal the biggest problem child. Jello looked at the hand of the former Jinchuriki. Then from the hand, he looked up at the wall he hit and thought for a minute. Maybe I should try. I bet I'll break the wall on my first hit. He said excitingly as Naruto stood back up behind him. Oh yeah, well that was a practice punch. I'll break it down the next time I try. He said as he got his fist back like he was going to punch again. No, I'll break the wall. Jello said as Urza then jumped up and stood beside them. Me too. Me too. I'm gonna try. All three of them reeled their fists back. Bakas. Rob karate chopped all three of their heads in an instant. All three of them crouched down, holding their respective thumping bumps on their heads. Don't even try that. Ow, why not Rob Jason? Jello asked with a painful tear in his eye, Urza whimpering and Naruto clutching both his head and the throbbing hand that just punched the wall. If we could break the wall, we could run out. Well, first off, no one breaks a wall with just a punch. Rob said with a matter-of-fact tone that got all three children to gain big surprised eyes. And second, you all are not strong enough to do anything like that yet. All three of them looked between each other. Urza looked up at the former fairy mage. Well, how do we get strong, Jai-san? Rob looked at the children, then leaned back and rubbed his chin in thought. He looked back at them, thinking he had just come up with the best solution to the question. When I was in Fairy Tale, I had many friends that I spent time with almost every day. We joked, had fun, and played around. I would get kicked in the face, and then I would bust a bottle over Maki's short head. Oh my god, that was fun. Rob said as he laughed at the memory of the midget using Titan after that and destroyed the guild hall. The three little stooges listened to his story, also sweat dropping at the fact that the elder had broken a bottle over his friend's head. I thought that those days of fooling around would last forever. But after some time I found that there are people out there who are stronger than you are. And when you aren't strong enough to save your friends, you can't help but regret what could have happened. He remembered how Makarov and the group had felt when they heard of the Taniwa incident. How they were devastated that they couldn't help their ninja friends from getting hurt. Rob looked into the eyes of the children and gave a firm determination. You have to become strong so you can keep the people you love safe. And so you can stop anyone who wants to hurt them, even if they are stronger. He smiled at the three children. That is how we can be strong. The slave kids were enlightened by his words and looked between the three of them with grins. Urza stood up. I'll become strong and make sure the two of you are safe. Delil stood up. No way. I'll become the strongest out of all of us. Just you watch. Naruto stood up with a cheeky grin. Oh really? Well, I'm sorry, but I'll be the best. The strongest, fastest, best mage that anyone had ever seen. I'll show the both of you that no matter what comes at me, I'll never get hurt. He said as he put his hands on his sides and let out a long throaty laugh. Delil smacked Naruto's bandaged hand that caused him to fall to his knees, cradling it, throwing out swears in every direction. Rob's sweat dropped at their antics. They had a long way to go. And although Naruto was not a juggernaut with that power, it did help in his work by helping him stay strong. He helped the other kids a lot by working with them in their fields as well. It helped the others a lot when they saw him stand back up after working so hard, giving them the hope that they could make it through this. He then reminisced on all the moments when the other kids arrived in their cell as well. How Wally had been yelling about how he wanted to see his brother again. And when he cried that whole first night, Naruto, Jelil and Urza tried to cheer him up any way they could. They still to this day tried to help him find his brother when they could. And how Simon jumped right back up after being thrown in and attacked the jailer. They didn't respond too kindly to that and had shocked him until he started to yell. Surprisingly, Urza was the one who jumped into the attack's path and took the last of it. After the bastards had left, Jelil, Wally, and Naruto checked on them, while Rob tried to heal them the best he could. Afterwards Urza walked up to Simon and cheered him up, causing the boy to blush a brilliant red. Rob would never say, but he had spotted Naruto give a jealous pout at the attention Simon was getting. Oh, he laughed so hard that day. Finally, only about a year ago, Milana and SHM were brought into the tower. Immediately the two of them had bawled their eyes out at the situation. After a while, they all tried to cheer them up, but nothing was working. Until Urza had hugged SHM and told him that she would protect him. SHM had cried into her little chest for the rest of night, but Milana was not as well convinced. At least at first. It was growing into night in the tower. Most of the slaves had been in their cells while some were to do extra work. In one cell, a little girl sniffling and sobbing could still be heard. Milana had sat away from the rest of the kids, rubbing her swollen red eyes away from any tears. The rest of the kids and Rob could only look on in sadness. They all gave looks at each other at what they could do to cheer her up. They had tried everything they could, but no result had been shown from their work. Finally Naruto stood up and marched up in front of the girl. She looked up at the 11-year-old who immediately brought her into a tight hug. It will be alright, I promise. He said as he brought his face away to look directly into her eyes that were staring right at him. You won't be hurt by anyone here. We will protect you because we are all we have of each other. Okay? He tried to explain to the little 7-year-old who only stared at him with big, mesmerized eyes. Naruto moved his head side to side, the girl following along with his movements. She reached up and patted his cheek, earning a confused look from everyone watching her. The little girl gave a large warm smile and laughed. Kitty. You're a kitty. Naruto looked at the girl with a surprised look on his face. The others were holding back a slight giggle. What? I'm not a kitty. The boy stated with a strong determination. Yes you are. She said with no change in her happy expression. You have whiskers so you are a kitty. What? He looked to his side to see everyone he knew stifling a laugh with their hands to their mouths. He looked back and was going to argue with the little girl, only to go silent when he saw her huge eyes look up at him. Naruto let out a long sigh and grabbed the bridge of his nose. I am not a kitty, he said sternly, getting the attention of all those present as he stood up proudly with his hands up victoriously. I am Nico Man. Nyan. He said, his chest puffed out in pride. His friends looked at him with dropped jaws, not believing what they had just seen. Milana had started clapping and cheering, causing Naruto to continue his foolish antics to get the girl to laugh. Soon afterwards, the rest of their group had started laughing as well. Jell and Simon posed as villains for Nico Man to defeat in his little act. They had played that game the whole night to cheer up the two new additions to their group. Rob had been so preoccupied with his memories that he didn't see that it was already nighttime. He looked around and saw that the youngest members had already fallen asleep. The older kids had stayed up to talk some more about their dreams and possibilities when they were finally free. Wally had wanted to find his older brother again. When he did, they would probably open a farm and find families together. It was a simple but good dream to go by. Simon had decided that he wanted to join the Rune Knights. He wanted to use his latent magic power to help the world in any way he could. And he just wanted to help as many people as possible. Jell was dreaming big. He wanted to travel the whole of Earthland. He wanted to see the mountainous ranges of Bosco and Seven. And travel the icy terrain of Iceberg. And then move around the massive country in the Pergrin Kingdom and come back. Maybe even past that land and see everything he could. He never wanted to be bound by anything. And they all knew what Urza and Naruto's dream was. They were going to join the infamous Fairy Tail Guild. Travel around the country and become famous and strong. And between the two of them, try to find Urza's parents in that big world out there. As they all yawned and prepared for bed, they got into their special places on the floor. Simon curled up near the soft ground by a rock. Wally sprawled out of the floor by the wall. Jell propped his back onto the wall and dozed off. Naruto and Urza lay next to each other in opposite directions. Rob found it cute that after so long those two had become such good friends that they trusted each other to be by their side at all times. He remembered all the arguments and playful yelling between the two of them. How Naruto hugged and comforted Urza if she was ever hurt. And how Urza helped Naruto if he ever worked himself ragged. But the closest moment between the two of them was a moment Rob would never forget in the rest of his life. The day Urza got her last name. Rob arrived back at the cell after a long slave day. He could feel his arms and back ache as he stretched out. He walked past the open bars to a fairly peculiar sight. Naruto, Jell, Urza and Wally were all sitting around in a rough circle. Naruto was in deep thought, Jell and Wally were watching him with a judging eye, while Urza was fidgeting in place. Rob was thinking of asking them what they were doing, but he had never seen Naruto put so much thought into a subject before. Naruto raised his head and said with a grin, "I know, we'll call her Amufisomas. That is a cool name." As Naruto looked to his friends for confirmation, he was shot down as Jell, and Wally slapped the idea away with a shake of their heads. "What? It sounds cool." Jell shook his head, "No it doesn't. It sounds like gibberish. It has to be something real." Naruto grew red in anger. "Well, we have nothing after an hour, so if there are any good ideas, go ahead." Naruto tried his best to calm himself down. But it is hard for a 9-year-old to take so much rejection and keep face. What are you doing?" Rob made himself known to the little group of growing kids. They all looked up at him, the boys were angry, and Urza was red with embarrassment. "Rob Ajasan, we have a problem that we just can't solve." Jell said as the talk man for the group. "We have just found a horrible problem that we can't let rest any longer." "What?" It's nothing, Jai-san," Urza said as she tried to change the topic and switch the attention away from her. The little 8-year-old redhead still had a problem when everyone put their attention on her. "It turns out Urza here," Naruto said as he started to build up attention, "doesn't have a last name." He pointed at the girl in question, who had a blush on her face similar to her hair, as she tried to pound her fists into her blonde friend's face. "I always thought that she never said her last name because she was embarrassed, but she doesn't have one." It's not like it matters." Urza said as she tried to avoid eye contact with her friends out of embarrassment and shame. "I'm just Urza anyway." "No. No, you are not just Urza." Naruto said almost furiously. "You are so cool and nice, so it is just mean that you can't have a last name like the rest of us." Naruto said as he stood up to emphasize his point and leave no room for argument. "Which is why I say we should call her Amayatoka. It sounds like it works well with Urza." He said, hoping to get the approval of the rest of the team. "Naruto, we are not calling her Urza Amayatoka. It sounds like we are making fun of her." Wally pitched in from beside Jell, who was nodding his head in agreement. "You just want to call her that because you have a horrible naming sense." "What? I don't suck with names. Your name is Naruto. How can you be taken seriously when you are named after a fish cake? For the last damn time, what the hell is a fish cake?" Naruto said as he grew peeved at their continued joking of whatever cake thing this was. "It is what you are. Stupid." Jell said as he and Naruto started butting heads. They stayed like that until they separated and sat down, a dark cloud coming over the boys at their failure to help their friend. "We can't think of anything. It's useless." Rob looked on at the boys in slight worry and understanding. From his experience with Makarov and Perusica, giving girls an appropriate name was hard. Either you couldn't quite find the right word for them, or every idea you had was just not worth it. He looked down at Urza, who even though she was protesting, had quickly gained a saddened look only to abandon it almost instantly. Naruto was slowly nodding his head at what his friend brother rival had said. He looked back up to see that Urza was slowly breathing out, the embarrassing tension fading as they stopped arguing about her. He stared at her for a few more seconds until he stood up and started walking. Everyone was watching him as he walked behind Urza and put his hands in her hair, earning a slight squeak of surprise from the girl. He looked like he was studying her head, ignoring the request of the girl to stop until a few moments he looked up from her scalp. What about her hair? He earned a confused look from everyone present, even the girl who couldn't look directly behind her due to her friend's position. She has really nice hair, so maybe we should name her after it. Hey yeah. Jello sold up at the surprisingly smart idea from his fellow slave. That's a great idea. Okay, Naruto grinned with closed eyes from behind Urza. We will call her Urza Red from now on. He reopened his eyes to see everybody giving him a blank, emotionless stare. Like he had just gone up in front of an entire town and proclaimed he was an idiot. What? Bully kept his blank stare. We are not calling her that. Why not? Jello joined the explanation. Because it sounds stupid. Besides, her hair isn't just red, it is a different shade of normal red. Naruto looked at the two of them and nursed a tick mark growing at the back of his head from their nitpicking. Isn't red just red? No, her hair is more maroon or crimson than just red. Wally said to the former blonde weapon, trying to explain their view. Jello grabbed his chin and thawed and made humming noises. I think her hair is something different from crimson. Maybe vermilion or scarlet maybe. Naruto widened his eyes in realization at what the tattooed boy had just said in his musings. Wait, what was that? That sounded good. Scarlet. Scarlet. Yeah, that's it. The others looked up at him in shock as he put his hands on her shoulders and gained a massive grin. Urza Scarlet. That sounds awesome. Jello listened to his friend's idea from his suggestion and made a face of realization. Yeah, scarlet works for her. It's the color of her hair, so we'll never forget. He stood up and raised his arms cheering, meet Urza Scarlet. Future mage of fairy tale. Yeah. Wally and Naruto jumped in the air in excitement. Naruto turned back to Urza and looked her in the eyes. Is that alright, Urza? Do you like that name? He made his point by making pleading eyes, not wanting to go back and think of more names. Urza was still shell-shocked by the sudden excitement that she barely realized Naruto was talking to her. She lifted her hands and ran her fingers softly in her hair. She softened her eyes and said faintly. Urza Scarlet. She looked back up at the big eyes of her friends, waiting for her opinion on the new name. She smiled and nodded her head with a faint blush and small tears in her eyes. The boys cheered and ran around in celebration. Jello and Naruto had a small argument of who actually named her. But that was quickly abandoned as they decided to start saying her new full name in rapid succession. Urza ignored the boys who were on cloud 9 and walked up to her grandfather, who was still surprised of the actions that had just occurred. Hey, Aja-san, what do you think of my new name? She said with hope obvious in her voice. Rob had closed his eyes, but that was only to hold back the possibility of tears coming out of his eyes. This was the first time in many years that he had seen the girl with so much joy and life in her eyes. He wiped his arm over his face and bent down, ruffling her hair in the process. I think it is beautiful, Urza-chan. The girl beamed a bright smile at her grandfather. Rob laughed lightly and settled into the rock wall beside Jello. He looked around at the kids he had seen grow up so much over the last few years. Some he only knew for a few years. Some he had seen change for over a decade. Rob closed his eyes and drifted off. He knew that these kids could take good care of themselves. Visions of bodies piled up in front of his eyes once again. His hands drenched in the foreign blood of the ninja around him. His injuries burning away and fading like they always did. Ansem calling from atop the cliff the formation the ninja should take. The bull and cat plowing through the futile attacks of their enemies. Immensely powerful attacks getting thrown out in every direction. Naruto once again dreamt of the fights and battles that took place in his subconsciousness. Over the last 6 years, every few nights the war would play over in his dreams. Not constantly, or even the whole war each time. But enough of the battle that he could remember each moment to a fine point. But no matter what part played in his head, it always needed the same. But the form of the familiar fox towering over him fading away. He could see that Kurama had noticed his presence and acknowledged that he was there. The demon would slightly turn and say the same thing every time. Didn't want you to see me like this, kid. Thought you would sleep through this and just wake up happy. But we're never this lucky, huh? I guess you probably won't hear everything I say. Listen close, kid. Kurama would turn down and address him as he knew that his consciousness was fading at that moment. The day will come that you be set free. You will probably go through a lot of trials and pain. But hey, that is just the way things go. His body was fading, leaving only his upper body. You will probably want to cry sometimes, but don't. That will show that you can't take it. Take the pain, carry it, and find what you can protect. And then. Nothing. He couldn't hear what he was saying as his body faded. Naruto tried the best he could to listen to what Kurama said as he faded away, but he just couldn't listen to his final words. And that felt worse than anything else Naruto had ever done. He knew that those last words were important. That they carried with them a message that affected Naruto even though he couldn't hear it. And so Naruto was forced to lay there, in his dream, unable to do anything to affect what played out. Once again listening to the last words of his friend that just fell on deaf ears. Urza woke up to the sound of the cult members forcing the slaves back to work. She looked around to see the other slaves rustling awake just like her. They were moving out to the daily grind before being forced out by the pain of torture. Urza looked down and saw that Naruto was still rustling, having another nightmare like he had for several years. Urza nudged him awake, Naruto jerking awake with a cold sweat. She softened her gaze, knowing that Naruto was in great pain trying to be a leader. He looked up at her to see that she was there, ready to help him if it became too much. "It's alright," she said with a small, soft smile. He calmed down and settled back down before he started standing up. "I know," he said without looking at her. She would be offended by anyone else, but she knew that even those little thanks were heartfelt. He breathed out and turned to her, his hand out and a smile on his face. "Come on." Urza nodded and took his hand to stand up. SHM grabbed another boulder and put it inside the wheel cart, carried off by a middle-aged man. He slowly breathed out and turned around, trying to pick up another heavy rock. He tried but his arms wobbled from the weight. His knees buckled and dropped the boulder back into the pile. He set himself back up to pick up the rock. He wasn't going to fail, he was going to be strong. His thoughts traveled to the older kids in his group. Milana had made their experience here less horrible by brightening the mood. Getting the rest of their friends to laugh and listen to them. Simon could easily lift several of these rocks without becoming strained. And he could do this work for a good hour. Wally always had Kid around, helping SHM when he needed it. It helped him out of the view if the jailers and stopped them from questioning him on his work. Gel was possibly the smartest person he had ever met. Thinking of ways to play the games and do the work as best possible. He also thought of escape plans with Naruto a lot until the example last year. Naruto and Urza were what he wished to be like. Urza was the kind Nisan that watched over him. She helped him through all the pain and worry when he first came. And Naruto always treated him with admiration and respect. He kept telling him that he was going to be very strong one day. SHM continued working and thought of what he could do. He wasn't very strong, smart, or cherry like the rest of them. He couldn't lead and think through plans like they could. He couldn't be like any of them. He would be stuck in this hell forever. Sho lifted another rock and saw that water was falling on them. He noticed that he was crying again after all this thinking. Even if they played and joked, they were still stuck here. Even when they tried to make things easier, they were still doing slave work. SHM held back his tears. He sniffed hard to hold back the runny nose accompanying those tears. He lifted another rock and saw a small covered vent. SHM wiped his eyes and looked around him, noticing that most of the slaves were working around the corner. SHM walked over to the vent and lifted the barricade, revealing a deep tunnel that went on farther than he could see. SHM picked up a small pebble and threw it inside the hole, hearing the echo as the pebble skipped on the rock. SHM slowly grew a big smile and then hid it, turning around to make sure no one was watching. He lifted the barricade up again and covered the hole. He continued his work for the rest of the time as he kept a small smile hidden on his face. He had found a way to help everyone. He had found a way out of the Tower of Heaven. "You found what?" Urza whispered to the little brown-skinned boy that had come to her during their shared work at the big cave. It was close to the time where the slaves were sent back to their cells. SHM had been hiding this secret in all day and could not hold it back anymore. So he told the person he was closest to, his Nisan. "I told you, I found a way out of the tower." He whispered back with a big smile, while Urza tried her best to keep the boy silent. "It's a little tunnel at the end of the workway that goes into the vents. Don't talk about this to the others until we come back, alright?" She said as SHM nodded his head. "This is a secret, alright." "What's the secret?" Urza blanked as the other kids had appeared almost out of the air behind her. She grumbled about the lack of privacy in the place and brought them closer. She started to explain the information that SHM had found. The others had all gasped at the mention of the tunnel. "We could escape." "Really?" Milana said as she tried her best not to jump up and down. She looked around at the others, who all had looks of dread on their faces. "What's wrong?" "Mila, it's not best that we talk about this. It could end badly," Wally said to the little girl while she looked like she was about to argue when Jelil interrupted. "Milana, do you remember what happened last year?" Milana and SHM both cringed at the mention of that horrible act the jailers did last year. The kids looked on as Rob argued with Naruto and Jelil while quietly yelling. They both argued that they should be working on ideas to escape this hellhole while they still could. They should be working to help the two kids that had just joined their group only several days ago. The kids had worried about why their grandfather had always told them that it was a bad idea to escape. How this pain and torture they went through every day was better than the alternative. And when Naruto and Jello had decided to ask why this was, they were interrupted by a loud command sent over the speaker Lacrima. Attention all workers, please refer to the center cave. Attention all workers, please refer to the center cave. The slaves had grown tired of their emphasis on the word worker. Like they had a choice in the position they were in. The slaves looked through the bars to see what the jailers were referring to. At the bottom center of the cave was the head jailer with 3 beaten slaves on their knees. One of them was a woman, black hair that went past her shoulders. The other was a man, with short brown hair that didn't even pass his forehead. And lastly was a little boy about their age. He had a shaven head of black hair and jutted yellow eyebrows. But his most distinguishing feature was his long, hooked nose that went well past his face. The jailer walked back and forth of them, like a parent in front of his undisciplined children. He held the speaker Lacrima in his hand and a spear in his other. He was shaking his head in disappointment as he thought of what to say to the masses. He stopped his trench walk and brought the speaker to his mouth. I just don't know what to say to all of you. I mean, I thought I have been lenient and kind all this time. I've given you food, clothes, and a place to live. And over everything else, I have given a purpose for your useless lives. He said as his face grew angry and distorted, veins appearing on his face. He walked behind the slaves and continued his tirade. And we have you all trying to leave this place when you need to work. I mean when I give people all of this and they take it for granted, I just get so. He violently stabbed the man in the side of the head with the sharp end of the spear. Some of the slaves in the tower gasped loudly at the act, Milana burying her face in the side of Simon's chest. He removed the spear and stepped on the body. And if I can't get results for my kindness, Zareth knows what I'll do. He tossed the spear up and grabbed its end, spun around and aimed at the woman's face. A massive fireball exploded on her head, smoke rising from that spot on her shoulders. Her dead body fell backward as the smoke covered up what happened to the head. The boy flinched and shook as the angry cultmaster walked forward to him. The jailer probed his spear on his back and bent down. He looked the child in the eye as the boy nearly wet himself in fear. The jailer slowly grew a vile grin at the result his actions had. You can't run from here. You will never escape our clutches. You just aren't fast enough to get away. He leaned in even closer into the boy's shaking face, and you never will. He stood back up as 2 jailers grabbed the boy by his arms and took him back to his cell. I really don't want to have to deal with any more of these running away problems we have. Because when we do, I'll have to make an example for you. The master looked around at the fearful faces of every slave he could see. Good night. The jailer walked away from the center as more men came and grabbed the 2 dead bodies. Rob looked down at the effect that sight had on the children. Milana and SHM were sobbing into Simon's and Urza's side. Wally and Simon barely held back tears at the actions that just took place. Urza was quietly crying, wiping her eyes of any tears that came up. Jello was shaking as he held onto the bars for support. Rob finally looked at Naruto, who was staring viciously at the retreating form of the head jailer. He had experienced the need to escape so many times in his past. But unlike when he was a child, these men didn't see him as a one and only weapon. He turned around and looked up at Rob. Rob stared back at Naruto before opening his eyes. I don't want to see you get killed. Anything but that. Naruto averted his eyes and looked down at his feet. He tried to keep his anger under control. Finally understanding why Rob Jichin was always stopping them. All of them were shaking at the memory of that day. Since then, all of the slaves in the tower had resigned to their fate. Even the overexcited children had been crestfallen for some time after that. But here it was a possible chance to run. A chance to finally get out of the tower. To be free for the first time in years. But we won't be running like they did. We can sneak through there and jump on one of the ships when they go out to grab more people. SHM said as he tried to strengthen his reasoning while they resumed working. SHM, are you sure about this? Simon asked as he moved the cart past them. SHM nodded his head. But if we fail, we'll probably be killed. Wally said as he lifted a stone over the pile. The rest of the group heard his reasoning and considered the circumstances. But if we don't take this chance, we'll be here forever. We have to try. Jello said as he cracked the rocks with a pickaxe. I don't know. Naruto, what do you think? Urza turned her head to her blonde friend and saw that his eyes were covered by his hair. Naruto. Please, we have to do this now while we still have the chance. SHM said as he stood on top of the pile of rocks. If we wait any longer, then we oh no. SHM tried to grab the rock he dropped as it rolled down the makeshift hill. The others were silent as the rock fell to the floor, causing dust to come up onto a jailer's robe. The jailer looked down at his now dust robe. He followed the still fresh dirt trail to the top, with a little boy there with his arms out. The boy was shaking and had tears well up in his eyes. The jailer knew that the boy only dropped the rock, but whatever he could do to assert his position helped. What do we have here? He said as he kicked the hill's base, causing the boy to fall down and roll to the man's feet. The boy looked up as he held his scratched knee in pain. Were you tried to attack just now? And then no, SC sir, I wasn't trying TT2. SHM shook in terror at the evil smile the man was leering. But it is so obvious that you were trying to kill me by throwing that rock. He yelled out as he played his fake wounds, earning whimpers from the surrounding slaves and laughs from the other guards. And because of that, I'm going to have to punish you. He lifted his spear at the boy's face. SHM trembled in terror as everyone and everything froze around him. Sorry, Kai Gak. The jailer shrieked in pain as a large rock collided with the top of his head, leaving a large gash and dent on his head. SHM, the jailers and the other slaves, all froze at the unexpected attack. The jailer fixed his position as he held his bleeding temple and swollen eye. Who the fuck threw that? The man screamed out. The surrounding audience looked over to the whiskered blonde boy who leisurely tossed a rock in his hand. He looked over at the injured guard and had a small laugh. Oh, I'm sorry. You were so busy with the boy that tried to kill you that I accidentally let a rock slip out of my hands. My bad. He said as he finished with a sly grin. You little shit. The jailer grabbed his staff and shot out a bolt of lightning that shocked the blonde boy badly. He kept that stream of electricity for several minutes that caused the boy to scream in pain. Urza and the others were watching in horror at the torture in front of them. When Urza tried to help him, he opened his eyes at her that told her to stay there. After a few more minutes, the attacking stopped and the jailer retreated, holding his gash. He was swearing as much as he could and cursing the kid to hell. As the jailers left they ordered the slaves to their cells. Simon and Jello bent down and pulled one of Naruto's arms around their shoulders and lifted him up. The whole group followed them back to the cell. They arrived back and lowered Naruto to the floor where he tried to stand back up. A few minutes later Rob walked back in and tried to help the numbness through Naruto's body. As the others watched in worry, SHM walked up to his big bro and stood there. SHM bowed down as far as he could. I'm sorry Nai-san. This is my fault. He raised his head again and showed his eyes full of tears, Naruto not even looking up at him. If I didn't lose focus, you wouldn't have been hurt. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. His tears were falling down on his damaged feet uninterrupted. The others watched in understanding at what had happened. The thought of escape now showed no hope if their best hope was hurt. SHM had continued to cry for some time until he felt a heavy hand on his head. He looked up through his tears at the sight of his older brother's hand on head. Shut up SHM. I'm sick of this. He said with no compassion in his voice from his actions. SHM felt his tears well up even more at the implied words from Naruto. Naruto lifted his head and showed eyes of determination. I'm sick of them making you cry. SHM stopped his tears and looked up at him as he stood up, wobbling a bit from the pain. Every day these guys hurt us, and we just take it. Ignore it like we aren't even humans. And all we do is cry, hoping that our tears can wash the pain away. As Naruto said this he clenched his teeth and fists in anger, shaking slightly. And then he remembered what he had experienced when he passed out moments ago. We will go through a lot of pain and trials in our life. Hell, we've been through a lot already. And you'll want to cry when you do, but don't. That will just show them that they are winning, that they have broken us. Take that pain and carry it with you through the trouble you go through. We will find a way out of this place, and when we do. Naruto faintly smiled as he finally remembered those long-forgotten words. When we are free, when we can break from this place and see the world with our own eyes, then cry. He looked down at the little kid who was looking up at him with dry eyes. So keep those tears until we see the free world. Because believe me, it will feel so good that you can't help but cry. K. He ended with a happy grin. The others were looking at the two with great surprise. SHM felt his eyes swell slightly but hardened himself and wiped his eyes. He looked up at Naruto and copied his grin. K. Naruto smiled down and then heard people walk to him. He turned around to see all of them copying his smile. Urza walked up and held onto him. Don't push yourself, okay? We won't cry again if you don't take this all on yourself, okay? He nodded as almost instantly his legs turned to jelly and caused Urza to stumble as she was forced to carry his weight. Urza propped Naruto on the wall to take a breath and sat next to him. She looked at him to see that he was watching the others cheer up right there. I didn't know you could be smart like that. I can't. It was Kurama who said that. He was very smart when he wasn't swearing me out. He said with a grin. Del joined the two while the rest started playing again. They all sat there in silence watching them. Naruto felt a growing feeling in his chest and voiced his concern. I think we should escape. The both of them looked briefly surprised before they settled back down and just watched. Are you sure? We can't stay here. We have to leave. We can't tell Rob Jichin, but when we are out we'll send help here. We can stop all of this if we take the chance. Naruto breathed in and looked over at Jello who didn't look back. You know when the ships come, right? Jello nodded his head. Yeah, I committed. If we go along with this, it will have to be in the next week. After that, it will happen again in 2 months. Urza looked over at them. Can we do this? She asked with a strong hint of worry in her voice. I know we can do this. And I trust that we can cover each other's backs, right? Naruto lifted his head and smiled, we're the best, right? They all smiled at his reference to their challenge years ago. They had decided that it was soon time for them to go. That they were not going to stay here any longer. By next week, they would be free. Thanks for watching guys, that's it for today, hope you enjoy this video. Take care, bye.